Hey guys, welcome to part 3 of What If Neji Killed the Entire Hyuga clan. If you enjoy the video then like, share and subscribe and also comment your thoughts as it inspires me to make more such videos, and remember to check out my playlist section for other interesting stories. So let's get started. Chapter 24. Training Montage 4. Haku is fine. The month continued. So that's 10 Nernroot leaves over 5 days, 1 in the morning and 1 before bed. If the headaches stop partway through, continue to take the medicine, but if they're still there by the end, don't hesitate to let us know. The teenager across the counter picked up his prescription and smiled warmly. Thanks a lot. Hey, when do you get off shift? I wouldn't mind meeting and hanging out sometime. Haku blushed and shook his head, smiling apologetically. Sorry, but I'm not interested in that sort of thing right now. Please, have a nice day. The guy shrugged good-naturedly and walked towards the door. This was not the first event of its type to happen in the past few weeks, or even days. Zabuza had remarked, once or twice, that Haku looked like a girl, and it still stung to think about his old master, but he hadn't thought he looked like an attractive one. He looked up to scan the shelves around him, and spotted a very familiar face. Naruto. The blonde looked up, saw him, and smiled. Haku. Haku had already leapfrogged his counter before the ban on indoor parkour crossed his mind, running across and enveloping Naruto in a hug. The teenager at the doorway gave him a dirty look before leaving. Good to see you too. Naruto got out through clenched teeth. You can, let go now. Sorry. Haku released his death grip, patting down his apron. It's just been a while. What are you doing here? Looking for you. Naruto laughed. What are you doing here? Working. Haku explained. This is my job. You work in a shop. Naruto wrinkled his nose up. I thought you'd be out there being the coolest ninja around. Except my team, obviously. It's a pharmacy. Haku corrected. And they didn't exactly trust me with missions for the village. I was a missing nin. But this is linked to the ninja hospital. The way things are going, they'll take me on as a medic nin pretty soon, and eventually they might let me take the Chunin exams, become a legal Konoha ninja. He chuckled to himself. But I'm still being followed daily. They can't seem to decide whether to throw me in a jail cell or throw me at a crowd of girls. Naruto blinked, clearly not understanding. I have a bloodline limit. Haku extrapolated. Like your teammates. It's how I'm able to combine water and wind release into ice release, and it's very valuable. He smiled wryly. My previous master's sword wasn't the only trophy you stole from Mist that day. If they restart the Yuki clan in Leaf, that's another superpower to add to their armed forces. But that would mean I'd have two. He made a finger motion. Ew. Naruto surmised. Indeed. So, why did you come to see me? I had hoped that if this were a social call you would have come sooner. He tried to keep the hurt out of his voice. He failed. Naruto scratched the back of his neck. Yeah, that's the thing. I was going to go see you as soon as I could, but they told me it would be, bad for you. I don't know what it was. They said some stuff I didn't really understand about Stockholm Syndrome, and dependence, and basically banned me from seeing you. Oh, right. Haku winced. I promise I'm not that bad. They actually told me you asked about me like 3 times a day for the first month, and had 6 separate breakdowns, Naruto continued, oblivious, which, if I'd known, I would have come to see you sooner, but whatever, right? Ahaha, right. Haku couldn't meet his eyes. That doesn't bother you. Naruto laughed. You aren't even the craziest ninja I've met today. Don't worry about it. Right. Haku felt a weight lift off his chest and smiled. So what made them let you come here? They've doubled my patrol for today, so I assume you didn't just break the rules. No, I asked Kakashi and he said he'd sort it out with the old man. Basically. Naruto paused for a moment, then fell to his knees. Please train me. Haku replied, eloquently. You know how to use wind release, right? Naruto asked. Hinata said that you used it against her in the woods. I really need a teacher. Barely anyone in the fire country actually uses wind, except Gramps of course, but he's too busy. I thought the only option was Tamari, but she's the sister of the person I'm supposed to fight, and then I remembered you. Haku was genuinely shocked. Yes, I have an affinity for it, and I do know a few strong wind jutsu, but I'm your best option. Will the Hokage even agree to this? I guess if it's not allowed they'll stop us. Naruto paused. Neither the two Jonin tailing Haku or the pair following Naruto moved from their hiding spots. That's that then. So, Naruto asked him. Haku shook his head in disbelief, before smiling at the still kneeling Naruto. Sure. I'd love to. Now get off the floor. It's weird seeing you like that. Hot. But weird. What? Nothing. Kankuro idly moved one of his pieces. So how can I be sure you won't just possess me and start playing the game for me? Across from him, Shikamaru moved one of his own pieces, seemingly at random. You're thinking of Ino. I can move you, but you'll know it's happening. I've been told it's painful. Kankuro raised an eyebrow, even as he tried to decipher his opponent's maddening strategy. The Nara had foregone all traditional methods of properly playing shogi, in favor of seemingly moving whatever he felt like in no particular order. Aren't you afraid of giving away information? Shikamaru shrugged. He had challenged Kankuro to the game in the first place, but was being oddly reticent. I fought your sister, and I had to give away most of my usual tricks to pull that win off. You already know all the practical applications of my clan techniques. You don't seem worried. Kankuro moved another piece. Not about the fight. No. Shikamaru replied. Kankuro reacted with carefully concocted confusion. He's probably just smack talking. He doesn't know anything. It's funny. Shikamaru continued. My friends won't stop talking about these exams. It's filled their heads. People always struggle to stay objective at times like this. They don't just want me to give it my all, they expect it. Any other uses for all that effort and chakra don't even factor into their minds. Do you expect to need your energy for something else? Kankuro asked, carefully. Do you? Shikamaru countered. Still might just be smack talk. No reason to get suspicious. I see your point. Kankuro replied, continuing the game. I'm only really here to escort my brother and sister. If you want, I could forfeit. Give you a free pass. He finally spotted it. Shikamaru's apparently random movements had been setting up a trap. Kankuro smugly moved to dismantle it. Thanks, but that would still leave me fighting either Hinata or Sasuke. Shikamaru replied. I've got this bad feeling about the second day. Okay. He might know something. Naruto's fight. Kankuro replied, sweating under his black clothing. I get it, Konoha isn't too fond of the Nine Tails. Quote. Sure. Something like that. Fuck, he definitely knows something. What do you think you'll be able to do, anyway? Kankuro tried not to sound threatening. There isn't much a regular ninja can do against a tailed beast. There's more than one way to skin a tanuki. Shikamaru replied with a smile, and wasn't that a suspicious alteration on the phrase? I win in 4 turns. Kankuro looked down at the board. Frowned. Played back the moves in his head, then went pale. The sneaky shit, he had. How had he even? Kankuro looked up. Shikamaru still had that lazy smile on his face. I guess I lose then. He stood up hurriedly. I hope you're this interesting to fight in our real match. We'll see, I suppose. Shikamaru started clearing up the game pieces. Kankuro internally marked him for assassination, smiled, and left. Quickly. Hinata finished her warm-up with Guy. Spectacular as always, my young pupil. Are you ready to begin the real training? Actually, sensei. Hinata had been thinking about how to broach this subject for a while. I was wondering if there was something else you could teach me. Guy laughed and made a humble hand wave. I'm afraid that most of my skills lie in taijutsu and physical training. If you think you need other techniques, you'd be best off returning to Kakashi. That's not it. Hinata shuffled. I meant. The gates. I see. Guy's face went solemn. I would not usually teach those to any genin. While the training to prepare for it should be undertaken early, attempting to actually open them should not be done until one's body has matured. You taught Lee. Hinata pointed out. Lee is an exception. Guy sighed. For the first time, it seemed like he was dropping his persona. He is, well, he hates the phrase, disabled, but it isn't inaccurate. His chakra coils are stunted. He is not just untalented at ninjutsu and genjutsu, they are completely beyond him. The gates are his only means of progress. He gestured for Hinata to sit and did so himself. The 8 gates are 8 chakra points along your network that limit your body to prevent self-destruction. Their power is great, yes. Many ninja have said that opening the 8th gate increases your power by 100-fold. This is an underestimation. Hinata gulped. Even the first gate, the gate of opening, allows you to use 100% of your muscles' power rather than 20%, and they are exponentially stronger over time. However, every gate has its dangers. They push your body beyond what it is supposed to accomplish, Hinata. The first can be used by a young, fit individual with no damage other than soreness. But the fourth will leave you immobile for hours. The sixth, days. The seventh risks permanently crippling your body anytime you use it, and the eighth will kill you. Just as it killed my father. Hinata looked him dead in the eyes. I've sparred with Lee. Opening the gates unblocks Tenketsu. Guy grimaced. I understand the dangers of using them. But surely there can be no harm in having them. Having one. I am not one for unnecessary shows of power, sensei. Being crippled and winning is better than being killed. That may be so, but perhaps it will give you greater confidence in your abilities. Guy shot back, deadly serious. Perhaps you will take on conflicts that you would originally never have dared to, fights you are not ready for. Like a man attacking the 7 deadly swordsmen of the mist as a genin. Placing your life in a technique that tears your body apart is not a wise course. Hinata grit her teeth. I know what it's like to lose a loved one, sensei. She reminded him. But your father died a hero. Mine was slaughtered in his bed. How many lives would have been lost if Dai hadn't had that power? What might have happened if Hyuga Heishi had? Guy looked at her sternly for a few seconds. Then he relaxed. That is the issue, Hinata. A few days ago I asked you to understand your overarching motivations. Eventually, you admitted your goal was to defeat your brother. But there is a deeper level to even that. He leaned in closer. Do you want justice? Or do you want revenge? He leaned back and put up a hand as she began to speak. Don't answer. The truth of your desires is for you alone to understand. Just as your life is yours to live, and if you so choose, yours to give. But I will not teach you this power if you intend to take it down a path of rage and death. Hinata looked to the floor. Lee has a rule. He will never open the gates except in defense of his ninja way. Guy nodded, silently. Hinata looked up, and spoke. In my life, I will fight. Probably many, many times. I will fight for many reasons. For my friends, for my country, for myself, and I'm sure sometimes I will fight without even knowing why. Sometimes I will fight certain of victory, but most of the time in the murky realm of probability and doubt. And sometimes I will be forced to fight an opponent who I believe is beyond me. And when I look down the paths of the consequences of defeat, and see that the world will suffer for it, then and only then will I open the gates. This I swear, on my heart and on my name. The wind whistled through the clearing. Guy looked at her, long and hard. 1 month is too short for most to even learn the basics. Tenketsu are my specialty, she replied. Guy stood up. Your vow is satisfactory. Hinata, I will teach you of the 8 gates. One day, I hope you prove that promise true. Good morning, Lee, said the pretty nurse, walking into the room with a smile. How does the leg feel? Lee gave her a thumbs up and a grin. Intense pain, miss. But I push through. I'm sure. That's good. The nurse seemed to grapple with something, before sighing. Have you done your stretches this morning? Indeed. I have gone through the stretches 3 times in order to triple the improvement rate. That's not how. You know what? Great. The nurse looked to the doorway and leaned in, glint in her eye. And what about the exercises I suggested? Those were harder, but seemed to have had more of an effect. Lee replied. Why did you prescribe a different workout? Because most of these doctors, for all their much touted experience, have no idea what they're talking about. The nurse bit out, before muttering to herself, they can survive 5 weeks in the wilderness with a broken leg and then tell me my methods are brutal and violate safety protocols. Lee nodded enthusiastically. I also enjoy ignoring what people consider medically ethical. Thank you for your expertise, Miss Nurse. No problem. She smiled. And call me Haku, please. Lee was about to respond when suddenly Haku was gone, blurring so fast he hardly saw it. In a moment she was stood by the foot of his bed, and since when had she had Senbon in her hands? Then he looked at the doorway, and gulped. Good morning, said the monster, with a smile. Gaara did not radiate killing intent, period. But there was something about him that set on edge anyone in his presence, as it clearly had Haku. Lee hadn't noticed it, at first, until he had to fight the Sand Genin. He glared and tried to push himself to his feet. Have you come to finish what you started? You'll find I am not as infirm as I look. If you try to attack my patient, Haku warned, you'll find he is the least of your worries. Not at all. Gaara didn't even seem to notice their aggression. I came to wish this one a fast recovery. Lee blinked. You were a powerful opponent. Gaara continued. And it would be good to test myself against you again. I came to remind you that you must grow stronger until you are able to fight me again, and perhaps then I will tear your insides out. Naruto was not clear on what happened after the rematch. Lee's training only left him with one response to that. Very well. I will overcome all adversity to become the strongest taijutsu master in ninja history, and then I shall defeat you. Good. Gaara replied. I would also like to remind you that should your village be hypothetically obliterated, you must survive that for the rematch to occur. Goodbye. He turned away. You know Naruto? Haku asked him as he was leaving. It seems like everyone important knows Naruto. Mused Gaara. You interest me too, child of ice. We should try to kill each other sometime. I believe it will be beneficial. With that, he left. I need to stop being surprised by weird people. Haku sighed to herself, hiding her senbon. You wanted to see me, sensei? Sasuke asked, walking into the clearing. Yes, I did, said Kakashi, snapping his orange book closed. I know I said that I have to be impartial, but really, you're my favorite. Really? Sasuke deadpanned. Really? Kakashi defended. Here, watch, I've got a kick-ass new lightning jutsu I can show you to prove it. You wanted to see me, sensei? Hinata asked, walking into the clearing. Yes, I did, said Kakashi, snapping his orange book closed. I know I said that I have to be impartial, but really, you're my favorite. Really? Hinata deadpanned. Really? Kakashi defended. Here, watch, I've got a kick-ass new lightning jutsu I can show you to prove it. Dinner had just finished in the Uchiha household, and its patriarch had been silent throughout the entire meal. Sasuke, he said, eventually. A word alone. Sasuke nodded and handed his plate off to his mother with a smile, sitting back down. His father waited a moment before adding, alone, Itachi. Sasuke looked behind to see his older brother lounging in the doorway, though he glared and left at Fugaku's urging. Sasuke's father looked at him from across the table. Your first battle is tomorrow. Yes, father. I look forward to witnessing it. You're coming to watch. Of course. My son's ascension to Chunin isn't something I'd miss. Sasuke's heart soared. Thank you. I promise I'll make you proud. Of course. Fugaku replied. I understand you are facing the Hyuga heiress. Yes. Your teammate. Yes. Sasuke tried to figure out where this was going. Your mother convinced me that having her on your team would spark rivalry and convince you to better yourself, and I am glad to see it has succeeded. Fugaku continued. However, it must now end. What? Even if you both are promoted, your team will be officially dismantled. That girl is no longer your teammate. She is your enemy, and must be treated as such. I understand, father. For once, Fugaku smiled. It was a hard smile. I know you do. Make me proud, son. In the other room, Itachi was glaring furiously at a family portrait. With a flick of his will, it, accidentally, caught on fire. Chapter 25. Who's the edgiest of them all? Part 2. The Hyuga hadn't expected the crowd. I hadn't expected the crowd. Itachi smiled from across from him. It's the finals, Neji. There were less people in my other matches. People are more excited to watch this fight, it seems. We've both been crushing the competition up to now. Itachi noted. This is probably the only match that's going to take more than 20 seconds. Assuming I let you last that long. Neji pointed out. I know we're working on your sense of humor, but now isn't the best time for jokes. Itachi dug back. Are both contestants ready? Asked the proctor. Both nodded. Let's make this a fun one. Itachi decided. Neji smiled back. Give the audience a show. Begin. Great fireball jutsu. Rotation. Hinata hadn't expected the crowd. I hadn't expected the crowd. She mentioned. Did I not get across that this was the event of the year? Chuckled Gecko, leading her and Sasuke into the center of the arena. The money changing hands. You two better not be accepting bribes, because if anyone gets caught there's going to be riots. Their competitors, Teams and Jonin Sensei were in a lowered area of the stands closer to the match. There sat Naruto, Jiraiya, Guy and Kakashi. Last chance to make a bet. Jiraiya reminded Naruto. I'm not betting against my teammates. Naruto dismissed. Why is it even such a big deal? Prominent ninja clans, same age, obviously rivals. Yeah, the odds are all over the place. Kakashi summarized. And their dojutsu are an interesting matchup. Naruto guessed. Kakashi blinked at him. Dojutsu. Oh, you mean the fight? No, I was talking about the bets on who will end up dating who. What? The gambling is getting heated among the Jonin Sensei and the Anbu. Chuckled Jiraiya. The smart money is on you and Hinata, given that she's been stalking you for years, but a lot of people think she's going to get with Sasuke, because of what Kakashi just said. The next most popular is that you and Sasuke are going to get together. Stop it. Up in the important people's box, the best seats were occupied by the Hokage and the cage, both making the cage equivalent of idle chatter, insults, subtle threats that concealed even subtler threats, and the occasional thrown kunai. Itachi was statuesque behind the Hokage's shoulder, head of his personal security. Hiruzen had offered to let him watch this match with his family. He had politely refused. Down in the center of the arena, Hinata squared off against Sasuke. I know we said we were going to be civil about this, but I'm afraid I absolutely have to win. Family reasons. Sasuke nodded across from her. It's okay. Turns out I absolutely cannot lose, either. Family reasons. Then it seems we are at an impasse. She got into stance. Gecko coughed to get their attention. Alright, rules are the same as for the preliminaries. You fight until your opponent is dead, unconscious, is otherwise at your mercy, or forfeits. The match isn't over until I say it's over, but when I say it's over, it's over. Losing control of yourself afterwards, well, it looks bad. Other than that, may the best ninja win. Thanks, said both contestants at once. I will. Gecko rolled his eyes. He looked up to the Hokage's box, and got a nod from the red hat. Then he heaved his arms straight out forwards. All right then. If both combatants are ready, they both nodded. He swept his hand down. Begin. Neither had even bothered with training seals that day. They blitzed towards each other. Sasuke palmed a storage scroll right as they were about to collide, making a puff of smoke about his torso. There was a glint. Hinata threw her upper body backwards as the blade swung over her head, then span in place as it stabbed down. I told him not to try and behead her. Murmured Itachi from the Hokage's left. Hinata cartwheeled away from its edge before jumping back to get some distance between her and Sasuke. Then she scowled. Cheap move. Sasuke readied Raito and grinned. We're ninja. Fair enough. Both pairs of eyes narrowed. Sharingan. Byakugan. Their dojutsu flared to life. In the stands, Naruto prepared to watch the most dramatic fight of the exams so far. 30 seconds later, the most dramatic fight of the exams so far hadn't started yet. Naruto glanced sideways. Genjutsu battle. Kakashi explained. He had revealed his Sharingan, and was watching the two children standing still quite intently. Sasuke's Sharingan means his illusions and hypnosis are much stronger if he can make eye contact, and Hinata's too proud to look away. Like when he made Tenten fall asleep. Precisely. But Hinata's Byakugan can see the chakra, so she knows exactly what he's doing and is perfectly equipped to stop it. Sounds interesting. It is. I was being sarcastic. When does it finish? Kakashi rolled his eyes. Give them a few more seconds, they'll realize they're wasting time. A few more seconds passed, and the most dramatic fight of the exams so far was back on. They clashed in the center, both dodging warily around each other's strikes. Then Hinata put a palm out towards Sasuke's incoming sword, and blocked it. Using a carefully controlled burst of chakra, she was able to nullify the lightning release chakra in the blade and blunt it. She gripped it and threw her other palm forwards, but Sasuke ducked it and twisted his sword free of her grip, swinging again towards her shoulder. The pace of the duel increased as the distance between the pair shrank, now much more comfortable pummeling into each other. Chakra clashed as the sword struck Hinata's hands, and as Sasuke got much more comfortable using his offhand to try and keep her off balance. Dust was kicked up between them as they fell into a twisting, dancing mess. She swept, and he jumped, and then he was slamming his sword down onto her. She caught the flat of the blade and for a moment held Sasuke's weight on top of herself. Then she heaved, and with another blast of chakra sent him hurtling up and away. He sheared the sword midair and flashed through hand seals, bringing his fingers up to his mouth. Great Fireball Jutsu. The sphere of flame launched towards Hinata. She shifted her stance slightly. 8 trigrams. Rotation. She turned, and the spinning blue dome appeared around her just as the fireball hit. It impacted with a roar and was swept into the rotation, resulting in a massive fire whirl that extended upwards over 50 meters into the sky. The crowd oohed. Sasuke landed outside the cyclone, knowing damn well Hinata could see everything he was doing, and started making a long string of hand seals. Just because you can see it coming doesn't mean you can stop it. A strange chirping noise filled the arena. The rotation ended and the fire whirl dispersed, to reveal Hinata making her own set of hand seals with a shocked expression. Sasuke blitzed towards her, a blade of lightning extending from his hand. Hinata jumped, finishing her hand signs, and lightning chakra began to form in her hand as well. Sasuke angled his strike upwards. Hinata twisted and struck down. Both Chidori slammed into their targets' bodies. Both shadow clones dispelled. The real Sasuke and Hinata walked towards each other, both genuinely surprised. He taught you the Chidori. Sasuke shouted. He taught you the Chidori. Hinata yelled. He taught them the Chidori. Itachi exclaimed. You taught them the Chidori. Jiraiya gaped at Kakashi, who shrugged. An A-rank assassination jutsu. That's like me teaching Naruto the Rasengan. Incredibly irresponsible and a terrible idea. Kakashi dryly responded. Exactly. Jiraiya shouted. And now I'm going to have to do that just to avoid being outdone. In the arena, the fight was moving again. Both had gotten their shadow clones' remaining chakra back, but given the immense cost of the 1,000 birds, that refund was pittance. Sasuke's chakra reserves were around half now, and he knew Hinata's must be about the same. He resolved to try and conserve what he had left, darting in with his sword. Hinata apparently had decided no such thing. There was a burst of smoke, and then an owl at least twice Sasuke's height was stood in front of him. He stabbed Raito flat down into the ground just as a massive gust of wind tore through the arena. Sasuke gripped onto his blade's hilt and saved himself being thrown bodily across the floor, but was helpless to stop Hinata leaping on top of the owl. This boy is not your enemy. It cautioned her. No, she told it. But he is in my way. Drama queen. It huffed, but said no more, spreading its wingspan and taking off. From the floor Sasuke grimaced, and began to throw an inordinate amount of shuriken at the flying menace. Making the most of his Sharingan-assisted trajectory calculation, he had ninja stars bouncing off each other to hit the bird from just about any angle. Hinata made the most of her own dojutsu and her tree-walking expertise, her chakra control put even his to shame, and clambered around her mount, striking away every single projectile he sent towards her. The owl paused in midair to put its claws together, and a cluster of white arcs hurtled down towards Sasuke. The summon, it seemed, had mastered the important wind-style technique of making the air really fucking sharp. He ran, the blades tearing up the concrete beneath him and launching dust and rocks up into the air. At which moment he realized two unrelated things. 1. That dust would do nothing to hide him from her, and 2. She couldn't use the rotation technique while she was on the owl, or it would ruin its flying. Grinning, he formed some more seals. Phoenix Fire Jutsu. A rapid series of smaller fireballs blasted up towards Hinata, and her owl was forced to make some evasive maneuvers as it came under, quite literally, anti-air fire. We may need to adjust our strategy. It hooted. I have an idea. Hinata told it. Dive. Of all the foolish, overconfident summoners. It obeyed, tucking its wings in and diving straight towards the floor as Hinata explained the rest of her plan. Pulling up, it ended up gliding barely across the floor, and Sasuke was faced with a very angry-looking bird blitzing straight towards him with an even angrier-looking Hyuga riding it, who had just finished gathering what his Sharingan helpfully informed him was lightning release chakra. He held firm, and put his hand on his sword. Thunder shock jutsu. She shouted, launching a bolt of electricity towards him. It was a stunning technique, not a lethal one, meant to keep him from moving while the owl hit him. But move he did. He drew Raito and caught the bolt on the blade. It reacted with the lightning chakra in the sword and intensified, just in time for him to twist and swing. Blue light crackled along the sword as he hurled a wave of electricity at his attackers. Hinata jumped off in time to avoid it, but the owl screeched as the lightning stunned it, causing it to crash into a slide along the ground. Hinata's leftover momentum sent her flying forwards and Sasuke was able to land a double kick to her midriff, knocking her away and propelling himself towards the owl, which he landed on and stabbed through the skull as it came to a stop. It desummoned, and he sheathed his sword on his way to the floor. Hinata got to her feet. That, Sasuke said, breathing heavily, was the coolest thing I've ever done. Hinata glared at him. She was hurt, not injured, but her chakra reserves were low. She could manage perhaps one more Chidori before falling unconscious, or only a handful of rotations. Her primary attack strategy didn't require much in the way of chakra, allowing her to spend it in large chunks without much worry, but since Sasuke had found a counter to the gentle fist, her annoyance was building. Surrender. She called across to him. Not a chance. He called back. She growled and tensed. At this rate, she was probably going to lose. If she lost, she probably wouldn't be promoted to Chunin. If she wasn't promoted, she'd have to wait another 6 months to try again, to get access to her family's secrets and to higher difficulty missions. People might get hurt because she wasn't there to help them. Neji certainly wouldn't die as early. And if she was forced to stay behind as Naruto was promoted. So to summarize, if she lost this battle, the world would suffer. That fulfilled her vow, didn't it? Looking deep inside herself, she mentally gripped a certain one of her tenketsu. First gate. The gate of opening. She shouted. Open. He taught you the gates. Sasuke shouted. He taught her the gates. Itachi muttered. Kakashi gaped at the arena as chakra swirled about his student before rounding on Guy. You taught Hinata the gates. She was very insistent. Guy defended himself, grimly, before bursting into enthusiasm. And incredibly talented. Learning to open even the first gate in under a month. It's an amazing display. What he said. This is awesome. Naruto was leaning as far as he could over the bars without destabilizing. In the arena, Sasuke had figuratively shit himself. He had considered attacking Hinata while she was charging up, but eventually decided that might just make her attack sooner and elected instead to throw shuriken over the arena while running far away. It didn't help. Hinata blurred across the ground, sending brick dust and shuriken scattering in her wake, and Sasuke's Sharingan barely let him react fast enough to stop her punching a hole in his chest. As it was he went skidding backwards, forearms smarting, then she was gone and she hit him in the back. He blocked the next 2 punches, took the knee to the stomach, then the elbow to the side of his face sent him to the floor. He rolled away from the stomp and disengaged from the first grab, so she punched him in the stomach and grabbed him again, throwing him halfway across the arena. It was then that she realized she knew the gentle fist, and chased him with palms open. That's why I made her promise to check her Nindo before activating the gates. Said Guy, sheepishly. They tend to make one irrational. Get out of my way. Hinata yelled gutturally. Does Lee get like that? Jiraiya asked. Lee's always like that. Naruto explained. In midair, Sasuke made 3 shadow clones, feeling lightheaded from the effort, and they landed in unison, 2 wielding swords and 2 unarmed. They met in the center of the arena in a clash of steel and flesh. Hinata was in her element, striking like lightning, and Sasuke. His eyes were throbbing. She was just too fast. His Sharingan was darting about like nobody's business trying to keep up with her, but she was just barely quicker than he could track and it hurt. She was going to win. One of his shadow clones popped, and then another. He attempted to make more, and got a kick to the forearms for his trouble. She was winning and there was nothing he could do about it. For a split second he caught the eye of his father and a few other members of his family in the crowd. Fugaku was looking straight at him, completely impassively. No. Sasuke couldn't lose. Not when he was this fucking close. The pain behind his eye spiked to a maximum and his mouth opened in a wordless yell. Hinata blew apart his final clone and turned on him, aiming a palm strike straight at his forehead. He caught it. For a moment Hinata just stared at him, dumbfounded. 6 Tomo and a grin stared back at her. Grimacing, she threw another series of strikes, all of which were blocked, then she fell back into a lower stance. 8 trigrams. 64 palms. She screamed, then launched into the combination. Sasuke realized that he knew what she was going to do. His eyes saw every twitch in her muscles, and extrapolated every move she was going to make. Not to mention, he'd seen her do this technique before with the Sharingan, practically recorded it. With tight, efficient movements, still outclassed in raw speed, he began blocking the strikes. He evolved his Sharingan. Kakashi gaped. He evolved his Sharingan. The Kazakage murmured. Oh fuck, he evolved his Sharingan. Hinata thought, dimly. You see that? Shouted an incredibly excited Itachi, grabbing the shoulders of the nearest person to him. That's 3 Tomo. He's fully evolved his Sharingan. In a matter of months. Not even I could do that. He's so amazing, I'm so fucking proud of him. The Hokage coughed. Yes, thank you for your input, Itachi. Please release me. The Kazakage snickered. Down in the arena, both combatants staggered backwards. Hinata was struggling to understand that Sasuke had just blocked the 64 palms. Sasuke was struggling to understand that he had just blocked the 64 palms. Well, mostly. He'd had to let 18 of the last 32 through. The technique's exponentially increasing speed made it just too fast for him to block, but while his movement was limited, his chakra was still barely flowing. He put his hands together while she was still recovering. Great fireball jutsu. She was able to react, spinning into another rotation, but not to get out of the way, as another burning tornado appeared around her. Sasuke didn't let up, launching concurrent blasts of fire that turned the ground around Hinata red. The exhaustion the first gate was causing her was beginning to show. Even though Sasuke couldn't see her past the firewall, the size of her rotations waned as she was forced backwards across the arena. Yes. Inside the firewall, Hinata was fuming. After all that, he was beating her again. This couldn't be happening. She'd come too damn far to let him wear her down into submission now. What did she have? A frontal assault was impossible. She didn't have enough chakra to summon anything big enough to survive the flames. His sword could stop her lightning jutsu. Damn that Uchiha. When had he started specializing his kit just to beat her? Of course, there was always anything. I don't care anymore. This bastard has it coming. Anything to beat him. She stopped spinning, and the rotation collapsed. Sasuke was a little worried when the firewall fell in on itself and his fireball blasted forwards across the arena, straight through where his teammate should be. But this was Hinata. A little burn wouldn't hurt her too much, and besides, she probably had some strategy in play. He cut the jutsu, chakra reserve smarting and almost empty, and fell back into a ready stance, eyes tracking across the arena to see what would happen. He probably should have expected her to burst through the fire and charge straight at him. He hadn't expected the black markings that spread all across her body and the feral look on her face. She was even fucking faster, blitzing forward and punching him in the stomach in a move that definitely cracked one of his ribs and sent him flying across the arena. He stumbled to a halt and glared at her. You activated the curse mark. He shouted. Just to beat me. You bitch. Well, fine then, if that's how she wants to fucking play it. He felt for the seal on his neck and broke it with a burst of chakra. When Hinata next jumped at him, he kicked her away, black spreading across his own skin and violence in his eyes. Are there curse marks on? Naruto gaped at the fighters, before looking back at Jiraiya. I thought you sealed them away. I did. The Sannin bit out. They activated them deliberately. They're going that far. Guys. Naruto whined, turning back to the arena where the duo were staring each other down again. Be nice. When are they going to stop escalating the fight? Asked Jiraiya. Well, Sasuke's dad is using carrot and stick to make him win at all costs, and Hinata gets access to more. Kill Neji, points if she wins. Kakashi pointed out. Naruto furrowed his eyebrows. So either Sasuke has to, or Hinata has to. Oh my god, they're going to kill each other. Stop the match. The match did not stop, and the gladiators fell upon each other like banshees. The following fight could be accurately described as two very strong children beating the stuffing out of each other. All pretense of technique or skill was gone, Hinata punched Sasuke into the air then jumped after him. He grabbed her arm and spun in a circle, throwing her down into the concrete. Beat him, beat him, beat him. Beat her, beat her, beat her. She landed making a small crater, and kicked him sideways when he fell down towards her, crashing him into the side of the arena and then chasing after him again. She punched and he ducked out of the way, so she punched again, smashing well over 5 holes in the wall before he grabbed her by the shoulders. He headbutted her. She headbutted him back. So he put a foot in her chest and booted her back towards the center of the arena. Both realized that this wasn't very effective. Crush him, crush him, crush him. Crush her, crush her, crush her. In unison, they started making hand seals. Oh no. Kakashi grimaced from the stands. Is that? Naruto gestured. Chidori. Both combatants yelled. Sensei, stop the match please. Naruto turned to grab Kakashi's sleeve. I can't. He grit his teeth. Fights in the Chunin exams are allowed to lead to death. Nobody is supposed to interfere unless. Sensei. Please. There were genuine tears in Naruto's eyes. Don't let my teammates die. Kakashi froze. In the arena, Sasuke and Hinata started running. The pair barreled towards each other, clan dojutsu honed for centuries picking out every weakness, every bead of sweat and burst of lightning chakra. They closed on each other, distance shrinking to 20 meters, 15, as they started moving faster and faster, like a game of blink where neither had any plans to stop. Kill him, kill him, kill him. Kill her, kill her, kill wait, what? With a blur, Hitaki Kakashi jumped the railing. For Sasuke, time seemed to slow even further. He could win. He knew damn well he could. Hinata was going too fast. His Sharingan could read her every movement like a book and he knew exactly where she would be at the point of the clash. There were a dozen different ways he could angle himself, a dozen ways he could reduce her Chidori to a glancing blow while putting his right through her stomach. Winning. By killing her. Was that really what he wanted? Of course. Kill her. For your father. For your name. For your pride. That was the curse mark. Opening it was a mistake, and he struggled to think of the counter-arguments he knew were there, that were putting such a horrible feeling in his chest. He fought to free his mind from its influence, to regain some sense of lucidity. Of course he wanted to win. He wanted, so fucking badly, for his father to look down at him, smile, and say he was proud of him. But kill his opponent. No. Kill Hinata. He couldn't do that. Why couldn't he do that? Why damn it why? Inside his head, he felt like he just broke the surface of a dark pool of water. Because Hinata was his teammate. She was his friend. And next to that, everything else faded into obscurity. Sasuke made his choice. As Hinata continued in a straight line, a second from making contact, Sasuke shifted, digging one foot into the ground and sticking it there with chakra. The resulting moment pivoted him in a circle with enough force to tear all the muscle in his lower leg, but pulled him off his intercept course. Hinata moved past him, surprise registering past the rictus of hate on her face, as Sasuke buried his Chidori into the ground in a massive, final explosion. I forfeit. He yelled. There was a moment of silence. Kakashi had stopped dead halfway across the arena towards them. Then Gekko shouted, Uchiha Sasuke forfeits. Victory goes to Hyuga Hinata. The crowd erupted into applause. Hinata was frozen on the spot for another second, before the Chidori dissipated from around her right hand. Then the first gate closed, and the curse mark reverted, and her legs couldn't hold her up any longer. She collapsed, joining Sasuke on the floor. A lot happened in the following moments. Medic Nin came on stretchers to pick up both combatants, who both suddenly realized they were in a lot of pain. Gekko glared at Kakashi, who gave him a, try me, look and walked back towards Naruto and Jiraiya, the latter holding the former by the scruff of his neck to stop him running towards his teammates. Itachi had turned away from the arena and his superiors. If anyone had seen him, the expression on his face would have been very hard to describe. Down in the seats, Fugaku stared straight at his son, unblinking. His expression was very easy to describe. Sasuke met his eyes and Fugaku, very slowly, shook his head. Sasuke just gave him a victorious smile. Chapter 26. But I thought you. Please. No. Pretty please. No. But. I don't care that they are your teammates. Haku pointed a senbon at Naruto's face. Behind him, A few more of the nurses shuffled awkwardly. With the exception of Tsunade's time, general policy was to let the crazy and upset ninja do what they wanted within the hospital ward. Haku was not having that. They are in critical condition. You may not talk to them, you may not see them, you may leave a shadow clone here transformed into a potted plant or something, and then leave so you can stop distracting me. Naruto gulped and nodded, then began slowly walking away. Haku sagged against the infirmary door frame and started mumbling to himself. Oh my god, I shouted at him, what if he stops liking me? Focus. Patience. He slapped his own cheeks forcefully to clear his head and turned back to the infirmary. Alright, we've got 2 half-dead clan heirs to repair, let's get moving. He paused and looked at the other nurses for a moment. Why are you all staring at me? Go. Naruto stalked back up into the stands and moved up to grip the railing, staring down with laser focus into the arena. Are you okay? Kakashi eventually asked. Peachy. Naruto spat. Kakashi rolled his eyes. They're going to be fine. Jiraiya's with them checking up on the curse marks, and Konoha's best doctors are in there. But not me. Naruto grimaced. Well, you don't want too many cooks in the kitchen. Kakashi reasoned. I didn't know you had practiced medical ninjutsu, Naruto. I don't, they're my teammates. And if we were in a situation where your talk no jutsu was needed to save them, I'd escort you in there myself. Kakashi allowed. But as it is, you pacing in the corner of the room, peeking over the doctor's shoulders and radiating the Kyuubi's chakra everywhere. It will only hurt their recovery. Remember what I told you when they were getting sealed during the preliminaries. Sometimes the best thing to do is nothing at all. Naruto recited, bitterly. Exactly. So take a deep breath, watch the next match, and stop taking your frustrations out on that poor railing. Naruto followed his instructions, letting go of the railing and falling back into a chair Kakashi had helpfully pulled up. The red disappeared from his eyes, and both ignored the handprints that he had left in the metal bars. An hour had passed since Sasuke's fight with Hinata, and now it was time for fight 2 of the day. Gekko pocketed his orange-covered book, checked his watch, and sighed. Alright then. Sabaku no Konkuro, Nara Shikimaru. Get your asses down here. The Suna and Konoha genin both took their sweet time following that instruction, walking together down the staircase into the arena. Still sure you don't want me to forfeit for you? Konkuro offered again. No thanks. Shikimaru replied. Like I said, it wouldn't solve anything for me. You seem pretty insistent on not fighting tomorrow. Any particular reason? Apathy. Same as you. Konkuro lied. I won't go out of my way for it. Who knows, I might just throw the fight. Make you look good and then let you catch me. Not a bad idea. Shikimaru allowed. Then he smiled slyly. Of course, if I forfeited right out of the gate you wouldn't get the chance. Then what would you do? Take the win, I suppose. Konkuro was swearing internally. But then you would have to fight tomorrow. Shikimaru pointed out. Konkuro laughed, hoping it didn't sound too nervous. I've already told you, I have no reason not to. Really? Shikimaru's smile became a bit predatory. Prove it. Konkuro's fists tightened. Together they walked out into view of the masses. Same rules as for the last fight. Gekko told them. If you have any incredibly dramatic grudges you need to settle like they did, go ahead, but do try not to murder each other. I doubt that will be a problem. Shikimaru remarked. The two squared off against each other. You could always just forfeit the next fight against Hinata. Konkuro pointed out. It'd give you a better shot at being Chunin, and you'd still be ready for your bad feeling you told me about. You're right. Shikimaru casually agreed. I could do that. Konkuro grimaced. Fuck. What's he going to do? Whose match came first tomorrow again? He couldn't be running on fumes when everything went down, but if he was called upon to fight he damn well might be, especially against Hinata who had put up such a fight earlier. But he couldn't let Shikimaru find out. Or did he already know? The bastard had been acting like he knew something the whole damn time. Was Shikimaru implying he would forfeit a bluff? Or was he actually going to do it? Konkuro didn't want to reveal anything about his fighting style either. Fuck. Shikimaru just stood there, perfectly relaxed. If both contestants are ready. Gekko looked at them both. They nodded. Okay then. May the second match of the Chunin exam finals begin. I forfeit. There was a long moment of silence. Both contestants were looking at each other. Kankuro with a defeated glare. Shikamaru smiling like he'd just had a theory confirmed. In fact, he probably had. You both forfeit. Gecko pointed a finger between them. So who wins? Neither of us. We both lose. Kankuro sighed, though he knew that wasn't really true. But then who fights tomorrow? Gecko looked genuinely baffled. Neither of us. Shikamaru explained. Tomorrow Naruto fights Gaara, then the winner of that fights Hinata, and that's the final round of the exams. Congratulations, you get a normal 4-person bracket. And since you can't expect Gaara or Naruto to fight Hinata right after each other, the tournament still lasts 3 days. Kankuro pointed out. So you don't lose out on any tourism money. The crowd by that point had realized that they weren't going to get any violence. Boos began to rain down from the stadium. This generation is going to be the death of me. Fucking ninlennials. Gecko sighed. Alright, get out of here. Up with the rest of the genin, Naruto was in shock. Well, Kakashi deadpanned. That just happened. The crowds dispersed, and the afternoon passed. So let me get this straight. Sasuke confirmed, from the infirmary bed. I'm not going to die. No, you're fine. Haku sighed. Now get presentable. Visiting time starts in. The second hand of the clock ticked past 12, making it 4 o'clock, and Itachi immediately appeared in the room asking, is he okay? Sasuke's fine, sir. Haku replied, with some combination of subservience and exasperation. Most of the aches and bruises are minor and will be gone within hours. The serious issues are his ribs and leg, but he is a ninja. He'll be able to limp to tomorrow's match if he wants to, and he'll be fit to continue training light training after a week. And I've already factored the Uchiha's pride into that timescale. It's shorter than it should be, so don't even think about shrinking it further. Itachi nodded, before frowning at Haku. Aren't you the ninja that tried to kill my brother a few months ago? Yes. Haku shifted. Sorry about that. But we're cool now. Sasuke assured his sibling. Since he knows how to break people really precisely, he's also good at fixing them, so he works here. Itachi checked, with narrowed eyebrows. Haku confirmed, grimacing. Well, okay then. Itachi sat down on the end of the bed. That was a bold move in the arena, Sasuke. I didn't have much a choice. It was either miss or kill Hinata, and I didn't have much a fighting chance afterwards with what I did to my leg. Sasuke defended himself. Itachi nodded. I saw, and I'm sure the Hokage saw too. But still, even after father telling you to win at all costs. Even then, Sasuke replied, certainty in his voice. She's my teammate. The tournament comes far below that on my priority list. Do you think Dad will understand? Itachi smiled warmly, and put his hand on Sasuke's shoulder. Brother, remember first of all that he's your father. Sasuke smiled back. But no, he won't. Sasuke's smile fell. As in, he's probably incredibly disappointed in you. Oh. He left immediately to go back to the Uchiha compound in a sulk, so it's safe to say he would much rather you murdered your teammate. Because he's an asshole. Sasuke looked up in mild horror. He what? Wait, really? Itachi nodded emphatically. Oh, trust me, I hate him. But he's my clan head, so I still have to do what he says. Itachi admitted. But the only reason I still come to dinner is to act as a buffer between him and you. You do. Our family for the last few years has been a war to get influence over you, with your mother trying desperately to keep things together. Sasuke groaned and laid back in his bed. Well, fuck. How have I not noticed this? You're desperate for his praise and you idolize me. Itachi rationalized, cringing. And could you stop that? It makes me feel like I'm manipulating you. Have you been? Sasuke asked. A little bit, yeah. Sorry. Great. He rolled his eyes. Any advice going forwards? As much as I hate to say it, grow up. Fast. Itachi pat his brother on the shoulder one more time, then headed for the door. Sasuke and Haku shared a bewildered glance. Oh, and by the way. Itachi paused at the door. Taking all that into account. I am proud of you, Sasuke. Well done. With that, he left. Kankuro, after detouring for a long walk, slammed open the door to his apartment and stormed in. The fuck was that in the arena, brother? Temari asked, without looking up. Hey, Gaara. Kankuro turned to his own brother. I need you to kill a guy. Of course. Gaara looked up brightly. Who? Quietly. Mind you. Kankuro warned. This is an assassination job. No problem at all. Some relief should be good. Great. He's called Nara Shikamaru. What? Temari looked up. The fox in her lap looked up worriedly before settling back down. No. Belay that. Gaara. Don't kill the Nara. Belay that, belay that. Kankuro shot back. Gaara. Kill the Nara. I am now very confused. I don't like that. Gaara warned them. Hold on. Why do you want him dead? Temari asked. He knows. Kankuro explained. I don't know how, but he knows. How could he? His sister reasoned. Did you tell him? Does he have any evidence? No, admitted Kankuro. But he was making weird references. And he's smart. That's not exactly evidence. Temari pointed out. This is already conflicting with a previous request from Temari in which I am supposed to spare Shikamaru specifically. Gaara pointed out, drawing Kankuro's attention. She what? Kankuro spun on his brother. Why? If I understand correctly, she intends to mate with him. Gaara said, oblivious to his sister's spluttering. Which she cannot do if he is dead. These examples of living people's usefulness keep appearing. It's almost like my natural state of being shouldn't be to murder. Yeah, almost. Kankuro rounded on his sister. You fucking what? I mean Gaara is making assumptions again. Temari was red-faced and refused to meet his eyes. But Shikamaru is kinda, well, insane. Kankuro threw his arms up into the air. You're all insane. Ever since we came to this hellhole of a hidden village, you've both gone crazy. I thought I was already crazy. Gaara mused. Can I remind you both that we're supposed to be destroying this place? He continued ranting. Now is not a good time for you to be getting attached to people. Temari, you used to be the focused one, but now you, he pointed at her lap, distracted. And you still have that damn fox with you. Uzu is a present from Gaara. She mumbled, stroking the animal. You named it. Wait, you named it after Naruto. You are becoming very excited, Kankuro. Gaara warned. It's hard to stay objective in that state. Stay objective. Kankuro's voice rose to a shriek. Gaara has a point. Temari added. You've been weirdly obsessed with this theory that Shikamaru knows everything when you have literally no proof. I've seen the board you have in your room with the pictures and the red string. Aren't you a little paranoid? A lit. Kankuro stopped. Took in a deep breath. Let it out. I'm going to my room now. He said, carefully. And tomorrow we're going to burn this place to the ground and go back to Suna where things make sense. The Nara compound was a small one, at least when compared to the Hyuga or Uchiha's massive complexes. Shikamaru's mother had once tutted that it was probably because the family was too lazy to walk any further. Nobody had ever denied it. Shikamaru walked into his house, calmly took off his slippers, and walked into the living room. His father was already there, sat reading. Good afternoon, son. Afternoon, Dad. Your mother is currently awaiting you where she thinks you'll be. I think she intends to give you an earful. Shikaku remarked. Your choice whether you want to face her now or plan your reasons for later. Thanks, Dad. Shikamaru was his father's son, through and through. He was glad that at least he wouldn't question his actions in the arena, trusting his son had a valid reason for it. Apparently his teammates and sensei would develop that level of trust in time, but it wasn't there yet. It was bothersome to have explanations demanded of him when he knew they wouldn't understand them. His family at least understood. He sat down on the sofa next to his dad. Dad. Can I have some help with something? The man looked across. What do you need? Shikamaru paused. I've got to predict something. Shikaku sighed, shut his book, and put it down beside him. All right. What do you know? Hinata sat on the hospital bed, staring listlessly at the wall. Unlike Sasuke, she didn't have any serious injuries, but she was still beaten and bruised beyond belief. The nurses had offered her painkillers, but she had refused them. She deserved the pain. There was a knock on the door, and before she could answer and tell it to go away, it had already opened. Hey Hinata. Her breath hitched. Naruto walked in, smiling the same smile. Are you okay? She didn't say anything. Didn't trust herself to. He walked in and sat down on the other end of the bed, facing her. She looked down at her lap. So, you're upset. He reasoned. Figures, it was a nasty fight. Awesome. I mean, it was super cool, but nasty. She had let out the curse mark. She had failed him. I get that you might be upset, because those things apparently affect your brain and make you super angry and stuff, but listen. She tuned him out. She knew what happened when he spoke. He'd twist around what had happened so that he could see the best in her, then reassure her that it wasn't her fault and everything would be okay. She couldn't allow herself that comfort. What had changed? At the start of the exam, she'd been entirely willing to forfeit for Naruto's sake. In the preliminaries, she'd gone to great effort to avoid opening the curse mark. It was the vault, she knew. The moment, trawling through what texts she had access to, she had come across mention of it. Secret techniques, it had said, inaccessible to the branch family. An upper hand over him. And then she'd been willing to kill her teammate. Naruto was still talking, didn't notice her fists clenching even as her eyes began to sting. She'd been willing to kill her teammate for power. She couldn't blame it on the curse mark. Even before then she'd been so angry, so determined, so certain she was doing the right thing. She was a murderess. She was just like him. She was a monster. She whispered the word aloud. And that's why you really what? Naruto blinked and stopped talking. She grimaced, and said it. Monster. Because she was. She didn't deserve him. She didn't deserve Sasuke. She didn't even deserve revenge. You, monster. Just get out. She flung an arm out towards Naruto, shaking, and he retreated off the bed. For a few seconds there was hurt on his face, before it hardened into grim determination. All right then, he said. If that's what you think. I guess I'll go then. He turned and walked very sharply out of the room, slamming the door behind himself. Only then did Hinata allow herself to cry. Leaning against a nearby wall, Kabuto watched Naruto storm out of the room. He smiled. The snake on his shoulder hissed at him, and he chuckled aloud. Oh, I'm certain, he told it. If he wasn't sure from that match, he should be now. It hissed again and he shrugged, almost displacing it. Oh, he can keep tracking them both, it would be remiss not to. But trust me, she's the one he wants. Chapter 27. 5-1, apparently. What's up, kid? Hey, listen. Our boss has got a lot of money riding on the other guy, so we've come here to convince you to URK. Well, the prodigal son returns. Fuck off, sensei. Sasuke smiled as he limped up the stairs to the viewing stands. I'm not late, am I? Walking with this leg is a bitch. Yes, actually, but I wouldn't be worried. Kakashi, in a rare bout of kindness, took Sasuke's hand and hauled him up into a good viewing position. Naruto has set up a warm-up fight, which was nice of him. Warm-up, ladies. And gentlemen. Naruto shouted from down in the arena, gesturing dramatically. Before the official match begins, you get to see a special bonus match. The assholes who tried to threaten me. Versus. The assholes who tried to threaten Gaara. The crowd cheered wildly. Please don't. One of the four thugs was crying. We're just being paid. Dude, don't make us kill each other. If you don't fight, I kill all four of you. Gaara told them. This was a good idea, Naruto. I have kids, man. Don't do this. Thank you. Beamed the Nine Tails, ignoring the whimpering. A much better idea than trying to beat into submission trained ninja who are already in the finals of the Chunin exams. Idiots. The thugs whimpered. What's got into Naruto? Sasuke turned to Kakashi. I don't know, admitted the Jonin. But something pissed him off last evening and he hasn't gotten over it yet. His eyes are red. Jiraiya noted from beside them. That always happens when he's around Gaara. Sasuke pointed out. We're pretty sure it's the tailed beasts reacting to each other. He frowned. Which would get worse if they had to fight. Hey, are the betting pools still open? Sure. Why? Kakashi asked. Can you put me down for 500 ryo that one of them is going to lose control and turn into a big monster? Sure thing. Pretty sure odds are 5-1. That high. This fight has worried a lot of people. Down in the arena, Gekko had managed to clear out all the poor thugs, much to the Jinchuriki's disappointment. Alright, enough dicking about. He told them. Are you ready or not? I'm going to warn you. Naruto called across to Gaara. I am in a terrible mood right now and can't promise any of the usual things like honor or mercy. Gaara smiled back at him. That's good. There's no point in fighting you when you're not trying as hard as you could. His eyes narrowed, and his voice took on an unusual growl. Come at me like you're trying to kill me. Naruto smiled as well. Thanks, Gaara. You always seem to understand me like that. Now, he got into stance, and his smile turned feral. I'm going to tear you into pieces. Ooh boy, somebody's gonna die. Chuckled Jiraiya. Then may the second, third. Technically. Duel of the final round. Begin. Naruto acted first, pulling a storage scroll from inside his orange jacket and throwing it into the air. It released its contents with a puff of smoke, that being a very large number of peculiar, three-pronged kunai. Kakashi sucked in a surprised breath. Naruto called out, buffeting wind jutsu. And a gust of wind blasted out from his palms, catching and accelerating the knives. The result, a hurricane of spinning metal rushed towards Gaara. The Suna Genin didn't even move, sand poured from his gourd and formed a wide, impenetrable barrier in front of him. Most of the kunai thudded into the sand, some flew harmlessly over or around it. And while Gaara was functionally blinded, blade of wind jutsu, glinting white, an arc of sharpened wind release chakra hurtled towards Gaara's shield and hit it with a mighty slam. Sand was hurled away at the point of impact. Naruto looked through the hole it had cut in the sand and grinned. Gaara had been forced to manifest a second shield to fully block the technique. You like the Haku special? He taunted, because there's more where that came from. He repeated the hand signals. Gaara was glowering. When that had taken over his usual vacant smile, Naruto wasn't sure. Some of the sand coalesced, forming a similarly glaring clone that strafed towards Naruto. The next wind blade hit the clone dead on, bisecting it, but the sand simply knitted itself back together. Naruto grimaced, and fell into a taijutsu stance. Would anyone be so kind as to tell me? Kakashi asked, as Naruto crashed into the sand clone, where Naruto got his hands on a stash of Minato-sensei's kunai. A gift straight from the old man. A future Hokage should have a Hokage's tools, I believe, was the line. Jiraiya drawled. Is he even trying to be subtle with his gestures anymore? I don't think so. No. The Sannin sighed. Down in the arena, Naruto drew up for an axe kick that slammed down on the sand clone's head, carving a massive gouge through its entire body. It crumpled. Naruto launched back into the wind blade hand seals, but across the arena Gaara had finished his own preparations. Shukaku shield, he uttered, solemnly. Rather than from his gourd, sand rose from the ground beneath him, the stone splitting into pieces to form a fat tanuki with a hat. Whatever it was, it looked weird as hell and stood in front of Gaara imposingly. Naruto's third wind blade tore straight towards it, but upon impact it only drew a shallow vertical line in the golem's surface. That line quickly disappeared as more sand filled in the gaps. My ultimate defense, Gaara declared. Its sand is formed from the strongest minerals in the ground around me. Your teammates Chidori would penetrate many of my shields. They would not penetrate this. Naruto teched. He ran in an arc around Gaara, trying to get an angle on him, but the shield moved with him, trundling around Gaara to remain perfectly between him and Naruto. Said Nine Tails tried to get closer, but the moment he did, Gaara's other sand lashed out at him and forced him to retreat, then began snaking towards him across the floor. Why do I get the feeling he's just going to use the wind blade lots of times to try and get through? Sasuke remarked. He'd better not. Kakashi muttered, darkly. I've spent weeks trying to get the basics of combat theory in his head. The first lesson was that he can't take every opponent head on, and sometimes he has to find a way around. You know, think like a real ninja. True enough, Naruto had a plan. The ground around Gaara was swamped with sand. He hadn't bothered to return to the gourd, and littered among that sand were dozens of the three-pronged kunai. Substitution jutsu. Naruto shouted. One of the kunai appeared in his place, as he was transported right next to Gaara, behind the fat shield. He punched. Twice. The first blew a hole in the sand wall that came unconsciously to Gaara's defense, and the second whipped through that hole to catch Gaara in the stomach. It doubled him up and sent him flying. Naruto's faster. Sasuke noted. And Gaara didn't have his sand armor up. Jiraiya cackled. That'll have hurt. The Suna child still failed entirely to make any sort of combat stance. His sand flew from his gourd and formed a cushion that he fell gracefully into, then he glared back across at Naruto. His sand began to whip about more aggressively, drumming against the ground and grinding the arena floor itself into more sand. That was bad. Naruto bit his finger and palmed the ground. Summoning jutsu. Appearing in front of him was the greatest toad summon he was physically capable of. It was about 2.5 meters tall. Sue him. He couldn't do Gamabunta unless Jiraiya threw him off a cliff, that asshole. And while he could start throwing around the Kyuubi chakra, he really didn't want to kill everyone present, and he was just pissed off enough to try that if he let the red power loose. That guy is freaky, remarked the toad, looking at Gaara. Blastoise. Water gun. Naruto shouted. That's still not my name, you know what? Whatever. The blue toad focused on Gaara. Water bullet jutsu. And then it fucking projectile vomited a blast of water at the One-Tail's Jinchuriki. The sand rose, and the water slammed into it, doing little visibly to the wall. The now soaked sand fell back to the floor with a thump. Keep up the pressure. Naruto told his summon, and put his hands together in a familiar position. Shadow clone jutsu. 30 copies of him sprung into existence. That was when the arena floor fell into chaos. The three-pronged kunai were still buried in the sand. They made very convenient things to substitute with. Cries of substitution jutsu echoed throughout the stadium as the clones began swapping with everything they could spot. They switched places with the knives, they switched places with each other, they switched places with Blastoise, they threw more shadow knives and switched places with those too. And of course, when they weren't teleporting, they were attacking. Punches, kicks, wind blades and thrown weapons bombarded Gaara, some clones even feeling clever and using the transformation jutsu to pretend to be kunai and jump out at Gaara from within his guard. Any individual clone's run of hand seals took long seconds, but with 30 overlapping it was impossible to keep track of them. Gaara didn't need to keep track, however. His sand moved of its own accord, getting in the way of every little thing that came even close to him. There was enough of it. Gaara's strategy of turning the floor itself into sand had paid dividends, and now he had a veritable storm of the stuff to fling around as whips and blades. The shadow clones didn't care about having sand in their eyes, but the real Naruto did, so for a moment Gaara was able to spot and trap him. Sabaku no. Sabaku go fuck yourself. A hasty substitution sacrificed a clone to save Naruto from the immediate sand coffin. You noticed what I noticed? Kakashi deadpanned. Yup. Jiraiya chuckled. What am I missing? Sasuke asked them, not turning away from the battle. It looks an awful lot, the Sannin explained, like he's using the flying Raijin. He isn't, obviously. Minato didn't teach it to anyone, but it's one heck of an image to present. Especially for someone with ambitions regarding that hat. He pointed upwards to the Hokage's box. There, Hiruzen was smiling a very particular smile down at the arena. Not enjoying the show? He asked the Kazekage, who was scribbling on a piece of paper. Oh, it's very entertaining. The man agreed. I'm just writing down my recommendations for Chunin. Final call is yours, obviously, but now we've seen everybody fight, I wanted to get some points down. You know, just in case the Jinchuriki lose control and kill us all. You think that might happen? The Hokage checked. I've got 100 Ryo on it. The Kazekage cackled. 5-to-1 odds, apparently. You may have a point. Hiruzen mused. Itachi, pass me a pen and paper, would you? The Uchiha rolled his eyes and acquiesced. Down with Naruto. Tides were turning. Not quite literally, but with a shallow level of amusing irony. The Ninja Academy had taught him that water release fared poorly against earth release, but Kakashi had later told him that that wasn't due to some inherent super effectiveness. It was a practical issue. Water attacked through concussive force over a wide area, and that was bad at damaging stone structures. But this wasn't true in all circumstances. For example, if you drench sand in water it will absorb it, and get a lot slower and a lot heavier. Blastoise, though he was now panting heavily, had successfully wet most if not all of the sand and even caught the gourd in the spray. Gaara's defenses moved sluggishly. Too sluggishly. He was forced to duck one kunai as it flew by his head, too fast for the sand to catch, then again as a different Naruto grabbed that kunai and swung it for him. A blade of sand stabbed that Naruto through the stomach, dispelling it, but that took sand away from his other defenses, allowing a different Naruto to plant a kick into his back and send him sprawling into a dune. 2 hits. Gaara muttered to himself. Too many. At once, all the sand began to move. The Naruto jumped away as every stray grain in the arena rushed back towards Gaara, surrounding him and hardening. After a few seconds, a perfect sphere stood in the middle of the arena. Within the sphere, Gaara started chanting. Naruto Prime made a signal, and 2 of his clones rushed the ball with kunai in hand. The moment they got too close, spikes of the hardened sand emerged and impaled both clones, popping them. This distorted the sphere's shape, and revealed something glinting in amongst the sand. Naruto saw it, and his eyes widened. He started laughing. Guffawing. It was a sadistic and slightly insane sound. What's so funny? Muttered Sasuke. The kunai. Kakashi helped. What do you? Oh. Naruto put his fingers together, growling victoriously, I win. He flared his chakra. Anyone familiar with Minato's kunai knew of the seals on them that allowed him to perform the flying Raijin. Naruto didn't have any use for those, so he had carefully stripped them off and replaced them with something more useful. So, concurrently, on the several kunai which had been swept up with the sand and were now within the wall of Gaara's sand shield, the explosive tags detonated. There was predictably a very loud noise. The massive boom was followed by a rain of grit and sand that fell all over the audience, and a plume of smoke billowing up from around where Gaara had been. There was a long silence. Did Naruto just kill a guy? Sasuke was looking on with wide eyes. Kakashi raised his headband and squinted. Nope. Sharingan. Sasuke activated his. He could, with effort, spot Gaara's chakra amongst the rock dust. It was tinted earth brown, indicating its usual nature, and was gradually bubbling up and growing exponentially every moment. What the foo? A giant claw made from sand burst through the smoke and slammed as a fist down on Blastoise, crushing and desummoning him immediately. Be buffeting wind jutsu, stammered Naruto. The dust was blown away, revealing Gaara stood in a low stance. Blood dripped from all over his body where dozens of individual pieces of shrapnel had embedded into his skin. One, dead center in the red, love, tattoo on his forehead. His right arm was encased completely in sand, with blue markings covering the surface. His right eye was black, with a golden, starred pupil. Naruto. He growled. He took a step forwards, but grimaced, falling to a kneel. Then, things began to happen very quickly. Sasuke saw the genjutsu before he could feel it. He wasn't sure whether the shining white feathers were revealed by the Sharingan or everyone could see them, but he caught the effects on his mind the moment they arose and dispelled them easily enough. Looking around, the crowd was not faring so well. Hundreds to thousands of civilians began slumping in their seats as sleep overtook them. Shit. Kakashi span in place. Jiraiya. On it. Both Jonin vanished. Sasuke's Sharingan tracked ninja fighting in the stands, picking out sound, sand, and leaf headbands, the former two working together against the latter. Down in the arena, Temari and Kankuro had already ran up to the injured Gaara, picking him up despite his attempts to shake them off. Gekko took a threatening step forwards, but suddenly the Sand Team sensei, Baki, had engaged him, freeing up his students to begin a retreat from the arena. Naruto was clearly overwhelmed, stood looking around in horror. Sasuke grimaced, testing his leg. It still didn't want to support his weight. Perfect. Sorry Haku. He vaulted the railing. He landed in a roll on the arena floor, letting out a cry as pain lanced through his leg before ignoring it and shambling up to his teammate. Naruto. He shouted, grabbing him by the shoulder. What? Naruto began in a very strange voice, before coughing. What's going on? Betrayal. Sasuke told him. We need to get after Gaara. He's the Kage's son and Suna's only Jinchuriki. If we stop him we can stop this whole thing. But what about the civilians? The Hokage? Naruto asked, looking back at the chaotic arena. Kakashi, Guy, and Jiraiya are all fighting off the enemy ninja. Sasuke reassured, trying to smile. And my brother is with the Hokage. What ninja can take on Itachi and the god of shinobi at the same time? Naruto paused for a moment, pained, before nodding, taking in Sasuke's condition. You're wounded. Let me carry you, it'll be faster. Up in the Kage's box, Sarutobi Hiruzen looked across at the cage with hard eyes. He and Itachi stood amidst half a dozen dead ninja. This seems a little further than your usual tricks, Rasa. If you are even the cage. The man in the white-blue hat stood up and stretched, casually. Oh come on, old man. Are you telling me you really don't know who I am? Does it start with O and end with your funeral? Itachi checked, drawing his sword and pointing it towards the man. Orochimaru threw off the cage's hat and smiled. Something like that, yeah. Oh, I forgot you were here, Itachi. Leave us alone, would you? Me and my sensei need to catch up. Not happening, sorry, Itachi replied. Orochimaru chuckled. Funny. The way you say that, it's like you think you have a choice. He snapped his fingers. A collection of bones tore up through the wooden floor, trapping Itachi in a cage. He swung his sword, but to his shock, couldn't leave much more than a knot in the ivory. Not pausing, he began making hand seals, which was when the floor beneath him exploded inwards completely, and a hand reached up and grabbed his leg, pulling him down. He twisted out of the grip as soon as he could, but still landed heavily on the floor of a lower corridor, then was forced to block another bone that was swung at his face. He slid backwards and assessed the threat. Before him was a man with green eyes, white hair, and strange markings across his face. As Itachi watched, another bone grew out from his wrist, and he gripped it like a knife. And who the fuck are you? Itachi asked. My name is Kimimaro. The man said, simply. And my master has instructed me to kill you. Chapter 28. More than one way to skin a tanuki. 5 years earlier. This is our new member. Orochimaru raised an eyebrow and looked down at the child before him. No older than 13, with black hair and white eyes. His leaf headband had a long line drawn through it, much resembling the snake's own. Has it shrunk? Kisame, did you eat half of it? The shark man chuckled. Afraid not. This is the guy. I wouldn't underestimate him. Slithers, he clearly ain't no pushover. They were stood in a dark cave, not an unusual location for the Akatsuki to meet. There were a few more twisting passages before they reached the HQ proper, but Orochimaru had wanted to meet their newest member ahead of the others. Oh, I've heard all about his exploits. The Sannin leaned down and grinned at Neji Hyuuga. Tell me, do you feel an ounce of regret about slaughtering your entire family merely as a method of testing your own power? Neji tilted his head. But of course, I am racked with guilt. I must have taken a wrong turn. Is this not the place where I may repent for my sins? Ooh, it has teeth. Orochimaru clapped his hands together excitedly. I like this one. Can I keep it? It seems to me you don't need any more children in your service. Neji nodded to the two other boys stood a respectful distance away. Or are they perhaps Kisame's kids? The one in blue has his eyes. Oh, I'm liking this one more by the second. These are my subordinates, yes. Orochimaru gestured. The blue-haired one is Kabuto, the white-haired one is Kimimaro. I have to wonder. These two have been training under me for years. What makes you more worthy than them to join us? Oh great, already with the tests. Neji rolled his eyes, then looked at the two, both of whom shuffled slightly under his gaze. Let's see. Kabuto has impressive chakra control, and from the way it's concentrated he's a healer. Kimimaro has a very interesting body transformation bloodline limit mostly related to his bones, excellent structure and density. A member of the Kagaya clan. And here I thought they were extinct. He looked back at Orochimaru. Should I kill them to prove my worth? It would be a waste. No, that won't be necessary. Orochimaru laughed. Those eyes certainly are something. Come, let's introduce you to the others. Orochimaru fell in next to Kisame, leaving Neji to follow behind alongside the other two children. Over his shoulder, he could hear Kabuto whispering to the newcomer. Thanks. Master Orochimaru gets like that sometimes. No problem at all. Neji replied, disinterestedly. Out of curiosity, how good a healer are you? I'm good. Konkuro replied, confidently. Of course, there's not much I can do for Kimimaro here. His biology is so weird most traditional treatments just don't work. Problematic. Neji admitted. I know some things about healing myself. If you'd like, as a show of good faith, I could compile a small volume on his biology. You can do that. Kabuto's widened. My eyes can see all of his insides, all at once. Neji replied. You'll have the manuscript within a week. Present day. Tamari paused, span in place, swung her fan, span back around and continued moving. The gale from it blew back across the forest outside Konoha, and disintegrated the pursuing shadow clones of a very familiar blonde menace. Why do I have to carry Gaara? Kankuro gasped out as she caught up to him. Because I have to shake off our pursuers. She bit back. And you're used to carrying your puppets. One puppet. Not a puppet and a half-dead Jinchuriki. Tamari opened her mouth to say something back, but was interrupted by a shout from behind her. There they are. We're catching up. Someone tell Naruto Prime. Oh come on. Tamari stopped and swung her fan again, disrupting the next batch of clones. Kankuro. Stop. Yes please. He landed on a particularly wide branch and shifted off his charge. Tamari caught up and started looking over her little brother, concern plain on her face. Gaara, you still with us? He didn't look good. He was still losing blood from the shrapnel, though the sand that had caused the damage now seemed to be spreading outwards to plug the holes in his skin. Kurama, he rasped. Where is Kurama? Tamari cringed. One of his eyes was still black, indicating Shukaku's influence. We don't know any Kurama, Gaara. Who are you talking about? He glared, then shook his head, obviously in distress. Naruto. He reiterated, in a less demonic voice. Where is Naruto? I need to fight him. Need to win the fight so I can pass the Chunin exams. Oh great. He's lost it. Kankuro sighed. Gaara, listen to me. Tamari leaned down to his eye level. You need to release Shukaku. Remember the plan. Fuck the plan. Ooh shit he said it. There it was. I warned you. Kankuro whistled and tried to not look at his technically traitor brother. You can still fight them, okay. Tamari reasoned. Let Shukaku out and you can fight all of them, if you want. It's not the same. Gaara grumbled. It's not Shukaku's fight, it's mine. Tamari sighed. Every time he started losing control, when half his mind was already swamped by the Biju, he started acting like a child again. Gaara, please. She tried. Do it for me. Remember Uzu. The fox. He nodded. The fox. She agreed. The fox you got me. Do it for me, Gaara. Please. He looked at her for a few seconds, mouth open as if to say something. Then he closed it, shoved her away, and jumped off into the forest. I cannot believe that just happened. Reiterated Kankuro, for the 50th time that month. Now what's the plan? He needs time to transform. Tamari pulled her fan and looked back the way they'd come. More orange jumpsuits were chasing through the trees. We need to buy him the time. Are you sure you're okay carrying me? Sasuke asked, chagrined. I'm not really much use. It's fine. I need the morale support. Naruto replied, cheerfully. The training seal is way heavier than you, and besides, if you're not around I might let the Kyuubi loose and destroy Konoha. Oh, right. They continued tearing through the forest, crossing the treetops as fast as Naruto was able. Then he grinned, seemingly for no reason. Some more of my advanced scouts just popped. We're right on top of them. It wasn't another 30 seconds before they reached 2 out of the 3. Kankuro and Tamari were waiting for them, and didn't give them a moment to breathe. The second they were in sight a massive gale blasted towards the leaf genin, forcing Naruto to go upside down and propel himself behind a tree for cover. What the hell, Tamari? He shouted, when the wind died down. I'm sorry. She shouted back. But I have my orders. Naruto's eyes blazed. I am sick. He growled. And tired. Of having to fight nice people because they blindly follow orders. Easy Foxy. Sasuke patted his head. Drop me off here with a few shadow clones. I'll take care of them. You go after Gaara. What? Naruto tried to crane his neck to look over his shoulder. Heck no. You can't fight with your leg like that. And Tamari shreds my shadow clones, you won't last 2 minutes. Then you'd better deal with Sandy real fast. Sasuke was stone-faced. Naruto shook his head. Nah, plan cancelled. New plan, maybe can we? Left. Naruto, in a display of his complete trust in his teammate, immediately went left. Unfortunately, Sasuke had meant that the attack was coming from the left, and Naruto almost got beheaded by a massive wooden monstrosity. Kankuro's puppet swung for him, and he ducked. Sasuke kicked it away with his good leg, and Naruto jumped both away. Dumbass. You said left. What? Was I meant to not go left? Konkuro's puppet turned to point its arm at them, right as Tamari started to move her fan again. That was when a chittering filled the air. It was not the 1,000 birds technique. It was, however, a fuckton of actual birds. Black and white paper birds, hundreds of the little things, flew in between the trees, mobbing Konkuro, Tamari and the puppet. Would you two like some assistance? A boy in a black outfit jumped up to Naruto and Sasuke and smiled. Sigh. Naruto and Sasuke asked simultaneously. You should both continue your pursuit of Sans Jinchuriki. Sai continued. Naruto has shown he can confront him on equal footing, and Sasuke should be useful in suppressing the one-tails. I will deal with these two. Didn't you get curb stomped by Hinata? Naruto asked, dubiously. Sai pulled out his scroll and turned to face the recovering Sangenin. The smile had fallen from his face, and with it every usual feature of the quiet, quirky member of Team Guy. I assure you, he said, staring down his opponents confidently. I am much more than what you have seen of me. Go. Now. Naruto and Sasuke didn't need any further encouragement. Sai began drawing, and Naruto fled after his target. Itachi was very much concerned. He had tried very hard to stab this Kimimaro, and Kimimaro was not dead. This did not happen very often. The white-haired boy, he couldn't be much more than 15, had the same damn curse mark as Sasuke, with no compunctions about using it to completely cover his skin in black marks. Not to mention he was clearly a taijutsu specialist, and whatever his bloodline limit was, it let him grow bones out of just about anywhere to deflect the occasional sword strike that slipped through. All in all, he was perfectly equipped to survive 30 seconds of kenjutsu with one of the most powerful ninja of his generation. Itachi was sorely tempted to Amaterasu the fool and be done with it, but Sarutobi had repeatedly warned him he wasn't much use to the Leaf Village blind. Not to mention there wasn't room for any large-scale ninjutsu in the corridors, with civilians on one side still asleep from the genjutsu. Speaking of which, he had already tried to catch Kimimaro in one, but the bastard would not look up, and none of Itachi's show-off finger-point genjutsu were strong enough to get his opponent. TLDR, it had been 30 seconds and he was still fighting Kimimaro. You're good, he admitted, continuing to swing at basically the speed of lightning. But we both know you're not good enough. Surrender now, or die in 30 more seconds. Not possible. I am following my master's orders, and cannot disobey. Kimimaro replied, evenly. Your master has ordered you to die. Itachi pointed out. No. Kimimaro replied. He has ordered me to distract you. Oh, you son of a. Fuck it. Itachi made 20 hand seals in the time it would take Sasuke to make 2. Fire style. Ultimate burning dragon jutsu. Kimimaro managed to look shocked. A massive, as the name implied, fire dragon burst forth from his hands, filling the entire corridor as it rushed towards Kimimaro. The jutsu grabbed the hostile ninja up in its jaws and continued to hurtle through the corridor, blackening the wood and eventually slamming through the window at the walkway's end. It continued to fly through the air above Konoha's skyline and would do so until the chakra Itachi had put in it ran out, but he had already forgotten about it, following it out the window but jumping up to reach the box where he'd last seen his Hokage. His long-honed pursuit and tracking skills were quickly rendered unimportant, however. Gee, Itachi muttered to himself, do you think perhaps he's in the giant purple box on top of the stadium? Hinata was beginning to realize she may have a stubborn streak. She had refused to get out of the hospital bed when she had heard a distant explosion. She had pulled the covers tighter over her head when her Byakugan saw all the doctors and nurses in the complex panicking. She had curled up into a ball when Sound and Sand Ninja had entered the complex and began to fight the medic nin present. When one of them angrily threw aside the curtain cordoning off her area, she finally grudgingly kicked off the covers and slammed some palm strikes across his body, sending him to the floor unconscious. A few moments after that, when she was making her way back into bed, Haku appeared behind her. Oh good, you're up. The boy had Senbon in his hands. Come help me clear the rest of the hospital. Hinata growled, and complied. They worked together with brutal efficiency, Hinata wordlessly directing Haku to the remaining attackers in the building. She noticed with some pride that most of them were wearing Chunin flak vests, but working together with Haku she was able to put all of them on the floor with little difficulty. She made sure not to kill any of them. That was the last one. She eventually said, throwing a ninja's unconscious body to the floor dismissively. Great. Haku was in full assassin apprentice mode. We need to move. Your teammates should be in or nearby the arena. If we move fast we can get. No. Sorry. Hinata turned, and started to walk back to her room. Wait, what? Haku grabbed her shoulder and spun her around. Hinata looked back at him with dead eyes. You can't just go back to sleep. The boy exclaimed. We're under attack. I can't trust myself out there. Hinata replied, tonelessly. You can't. Haku winced. Is this about your talk with Naruto? Hinata flinched. It is. Oh perfect. Look, I'm still not okay with you insulting him like that, but we have bigger things to worry about right now than your lover's quarrel. Hold on. Hinata held up a hand. I insulted him. Well, yes. Haku blinked. You called him a monster. He was muttering about it as he left. Apparently he's been in a mood all day. What? No. Hinata fell back a step. He's not a. I'm. She replayed the conversation in her head, and paled. The Kyuubi. That's what he thought. Yes. Haku rolled his eyes. Look, you can apologize to him when we get to him. Right now we need to move. No. Oh, will you just tell me the root of the issue already? Hinata gulped. I almost killed Sasuke. I was going to. Because I couldn't control myself. Because of the curse mark. How can I trust myself around Naruto? Hinata. The fact that you're scared is evidence enough. Haku grabbed her by the shoulders. Listen to me. You're not the only one who cares about Naruto. A lot. Are you saying I'm fucked up in the head? I don't even think sexuality comes into it. Haku sighed. And I know you're worried you'll hurt him. But frankly at this point you'll have to risk it. But he needs you. Haku stared Hinata dead in the eyes. You two are a team, right? It's not hard to not kill him. Just don't kill him. Maybe. And besides, if you're not there, someone else might do it for you. Hinata grimaced, and tried to phrase what she was thinking. You're telling me exactly what I want to hear. She said, eventually. It's not that I think you're trying to deceive me, it's just. I want to believe you. So badly. Hinata. Haku smiled at her. You are allowed to be happy. It was like she had been waiting for that permission for 5 years. Hinata stepped backwards. Breathed in, and breathed out. Then nodded. Follow me. She took off for a nearby stairwell. The entrance is the other way. Haku told her. I know. She shouted back. We're going to the roof. Quote. Son of a bitch. Sasuke shouted. Randomly. Realize something? Naruto asked distractedly, from underneath him. Most of his attention was on Gaara's scent, not far ahead of them. Why Sai said I'd be useful in suppressing Gaara. Sasuke answered. I mean, I'm offended, it's a thing that's pissed my clan off for years, but he has a point. Explain. Naruto hurried him. Right. Sorry. Sasuke apologized. Basically there's 3 ways we know of to suppress a Biju. One is with sealing like the Uzumaki clan's good at, which is how the Kyuubi was put in you. Then there's the first Hokage's chakra suppression thingy which is somehow a wood release ability, and then there's the Uchiha. Apparently a fully evolved Sharingan can use Genjutsu on the Biju. So you can put Shukaku to sleep. Naruto cut through the author's exposition with his usual bluntness. I mean, probably. Sasuke winced. I don't know. We spend so much time denying making the Kyuubi destroy the leaf, nobody bothered to teach me how. You could do the thing you did to Tenten. You put her unconscious. Naruto offered. Quote. Maybe. Sasuke guessed. But I'm not that good at it yet. To do it you'd have to get my crippled ass within kissing range of. He gulped, and pointed. That. Naruto stopped, and looked at the figure in front of him. The Kyuubi's insistent pressure, now feeling like a fox was scratching at the insides of his stomach, increased. Hey. Gaara. Gaara looked up. The sand was all over him. Wisps of the stuff surrounded his entire body, but were concentrated on his left side. His arm was completely covered, and had forked into the same claw Naruto had seen in the arena, only bigger. The sand had also spread partway down his leg and across his midriff, and most frighteningly, his face. He looked at them with a twisted smile, half of which was warped and etched into the sand covering the majority of his head. Naruto. He growled. It's good to see you again. Our duel was interrupted. Would you like to continue? Shadow clone jutsu. Naruto muttered, and passed Sasuke off to one of his duplicates. Damn right I want to continue. He shouted. But wouldn't it be better to do it without your furry friend? I cannot stop it, any longer. Gaara corrected himself. Perhaps you could, in my place, but it does not matter. I have enough time before he emerges to kill you. He threw back his head, and roared. Come, try to kill me. Give my life meaning. Drama queen. Sasuke remarked. I'll try to restrain him. Naruto told his teammate, before jumping into action. His first move, naturally, was to summon a squad of shadow clones. Gaara came at them, swinging his Biju arm with reckless abandon. Naruto had never seen him as much as run before, but he was fast now, keeping up with the shadow clones and crushing them with relative ease. However, his usual sand manipulation abilities seemed to have left him. Naruto gleefully began to cast all the jutsu that had previously been ineffective, peppering Gaara with shadow shuriken and, finally, being able to punch him with noticeable effect. None of this seemed to cause any actual pain to the Jinchuriki, who just seemed to get angrier. He was able to catch the real Naruto with a swipe and throw him backwards into a nearby tree, crunching in the bark. Naruto, feeling no pain, which he had a sneaking suspicion meant the Kyuubi was starting to influence him, got back up and started making the wind blade hand seals, worriedly noting that his chakra levels were actually dipping. Aim for the human part. The sand protects him, but if I can catch him on the uncovered part of his head. Wait, since when the hell could you talk to me? Naruto grimaced and fired off the blade, and it struck Gaara's claw arm. He shrugged it off and charged again. Kill the pathetic human. If you kill the host, the Biju alone is severely weakened. I don't want him dead. I want him restrained. Naruto found a sufficiently sturdy-looking tree and positioned Gaara between him and it, then summoned a new squad of clones. Buffeting wind jutsu. They chorused. Gaara's new form suffered from higher surface area and low grip on the floor, and the combined gust caught him up and forced him against the tree. Instead of using it like a blast, Naruto kept up the pressure, keeping Gaara trapped against the tree's surface and gradually walking closer, as more of the surviving clones joined his endeavor. More sand spread across his body, but Gaara couldn't move. Now, Sasuke! Naruto shouted. The clone carrying his teammate jumped down from the bottle's outskirts and began sprinting towards the trapped Jinchuriki, as Sasuke activated his Sharingan. The sand, having almost completely taken over Gaara's face, moved of its own accord. Wind bullet. Shukaku declared, and then launched a blast of compressed air that pummeled right through Naruto's technique and cancelled it out with a sonic boom. Then he jumped off the tree and batted the Uzumaki aside. Naruto! Sasuke shouted. No interfering. Die! Gaara shouted, propelling himself at the Uchiha and the shadow clone carrying him. Said clone had been running full pelt towards Gaara, and was now skidding to a stop as a giant sand claw came swinging for Sasuke's face. He flinched, closing his eyes. And then, when the pain didn't come, opened them again. Gaara, almost fully transformed now, stood in front of him, straining desperately to claw his face in. But Gaara was restrained. Blue-yellow glowing chains wrapped around his arms and midriff, causing all the sand touching them to fall to the floor. Sasuke tracked those chains backwards to their source, where they were tightly held by a red-faced, grimacing Naruto. What are you doing? Sasuke shouted. I don't know. Naruto panted back. Just get him. Now. Sasuke acquiesced. He stared right into Gaara's eyes and poured chakra through his own Sharingan. Alright, asshole. Time to Sabaku go to sleep. Gaara's one human eye struggled to stay open, as his body flailed in place, and he let out a guttural, no. But eventually, he collapsed. The sand on his body dropped off him, the chains, whatever the hell they were, disappeared, and he collapsed into a pile of his own sand. Sasuke promptly overbalanced his shadow clone mount and fell onto the floor, groaning. Sabaku go to sleep. That was the best you could come up with. Naruto gasped out. Hey, you did it in your fight. Sasuke flailed an arm at him. And what the hell were those chains? I don't know. Naruto looked down at his hands in confusion. I didn't use hand seals or anything, they just came out. Sounds like sealing. Sasuke mused, staring up at the sky. Or maybe a bloodline limit. Who knows? You might have. He paused. Blinked. Looked down at Gaara's form. Naruto. Am I losing it or is that sand still moving? Naruto looked. The sand around Gaara was still shifting. No, you're not crazy. The voice in his head he was getting very suspicious about was growling to him again. Sasuke. You definitely did it properly. I did the sleep thing, yeah, said Sasuke, limping to his feet. The sand around Gaara was definitely moving now, expanding and swirling about him. So Gaara's asleep. Naruto confirmed. Yes, Gaara's asleep. Sasuke began to move away from the sand, that was beginning to take shape. The dark blue markings were appearing on it again. Well, in that case, Naruto gulped. Who's keeping Shukaku in check? Fuck. Black holed eyes appeared in the mass of sand, as did a gaping mouth. Well, about goddamn time, declared the first of the tailed beasts. Chapter 29. Konoha Skyline. Now with giant monsters. The Reaper Death Seal. Do not fuck around with this thing. Seriously. The moment the Uzumaki showed me this thing I was like, damn, you genuinely got this to work. What is wrong with you? Like, how did you test this? Tobirama is now telling me to be more concise. Ahem. The Reaper Death Seal, or Dead Demon Consuming Seal, is a sealing technique developed the Uzumaki clan that allows you to summon the literal Grim Reaper. It's important to note that using this technique requires you to sacrifice your soul to the Reaper, which is a pretty fucking steep price, making it a suicide jutsu. After summoning the Reaper, the user must successfully grapple their target to bring the effects of the jutsu to bear. At this point the Reaper will become visible to the target and they will be rendered almost completely immobile. If the user dies before successfully carrying out their objective, the jutsu predictably fails. The primary use of this jutsu is to have the Reaper consume the target's soul, in an almost unstoppable instant kill. However, the Reaper can also be used for other incredibly powerful sealing techniques, such as removing access to limbs, limiting the target's power, or even meddling with the chakra of the Biju. Note to self, ask Lady Mito some questions. It says here, limits not found. So, you know. After the user's soul is forfeit, they may target additional non-sentients such as shadow clones, physical objects, or Edo Tensei summons. Note to self, ask Tobirama some questions. However, only one true life may be sealed successfully. All lives forfeit to the Reaper will be sealed in the belly of the Reaper for eternal torment. From there they will be inaccessible to the Edo Tensei unless the Reaper release mask, located in the private Uzumaki clan vaults, is used in a ritual that sacrifices another soul. But come on, when is that ever going to be important? Official statement from Hokage Senju Hashirama, on storing this technique in the "Don't fuck with these" scroll. Orochimaru grimaced, and twitched his fingers. Sarutobi winced, and tugged. How long is it going to take you to die? The snake Sanin hissed. How long is it going to take you to lose your soul? The Hokage growled. Both paused. It's going to be like 5 episodes, isn't it? Oh yeah, at least 5. Since when could he do that? I don't know. Sasuke piggybacking. Naruto sprinted through the forest. Behind them, the forest was rapidly disintegrating. Towering above the treeline was Shukaku, its giant sand avatar roaring triumphantly as it batted aside the surrounding flora and chased after the fleeing genin. Gaara was barely visible as a speck, sprouting from its forehead. We need to stop it. Sasuke told Naruto. I know. We're leading it right to Konoha. I know. Naruto. What? You're doing the demon voice thing again. Naruto grimaced, then shook his head. Sorry. Shukaku being fully awake has really riled the Kyuubi up. And his voice turned to a whine. I've just had a really tough couple days, alright. He jumped, managing to stay above a tsunami of sand that smashed the trees below his feet. Maybe. Sasuke hedged. Maybe we should try letting out the Kyuubi. What? Just a little. Sasuke held his hands up defensively, then immediately dropped them back to Naruto's shoulders. It really helped back on the bridge. We really do not need more giant monsters walking around, Naruto countered. Then he paused. Actually, maybe we do. What? Naruto kicked off the next tree and skidded to a stop on the ground, dropping off Sasuke and biting one finger enough to draw blood. All right, Mr. Nine Tails. You've been trying to let out your chakra all day. This is your chance, so don't you dare hold back on me now. The internal challenge was met with a gigantic burst of energy, and his eyes widened as red chakra flooded his system. He slammed his bloodied palm to the ground. Summoning jutsu. There was a boom. A massive plume of smoke billowed up from the forest floor, scattering nearby trees and sand. Shukaku turned to glare at the new threat. Naruto waved away the smoke to find himself stood on the head of a very large red toad. He grinned, turning towards Shukaku, then frowned. Red skin. He looked down. Gameiken. He shouted, looking in shock at the toad summon. Naruto. What is this? Next to him, Sasuke was stood on top of the head of a different toad entirely, this one aquamarine colored. Gamahiro. Naruto looked at that one, blankly. Well met, Naruto. The toad beneath him rumbled. You trust us to take down this big sandy menace. We'll do our best. Wait. Naruto held up a hand. Thanks, guys, really, but, where the hell is Gamabunta? Mawahaha. I am the Toad Sage, Jiraiya. Snakes and traitors, fear me. Leaf Ninja and, ladies, rally behind me. Let's take back our village. Beneath Jiraiya, Gamabunta jumped, swinging his sword and decapitating one of the giant snakes. It was obvious Orochimaru was involved, nobody else had enough clout with the snakes to summon this many big ones. And they were big. The three remaining were towering over Konoha's buildings and destroying everything they saw. Doing good down there, Gamabunta. Jiraiya called to his summon. Having the time o' my life, Jiraiya. Ha. Gamabunta paused and turned his head. Off in the distance, three other massive figures were clashing in Konoha's forest. Gamahiro. Gameiken. Gamabunta's eyes were wide. Who summoned them? And what is Shukaku doing awake? Naruto. Jiraiya muttered. What have you gotten up to? Sai was in trouble. He constructed a new set of paper shuriken and threw them, but Temari blew them all straight back. When she was recovering from the move, he darted in with his sword, but was intercepted by Konkuro's puppet. Stabbing it in the chest did nothing, and it caught his attempt to behead it. Then a spike emerged from its mouth, and he was forced to leap backwards, at which point another gust from Temari's fan caught him and threw him into a tree. He had expected to face at best two Chunin-level opponents. He'd been ready for that. But Konkuro and Temari had been trained from young ages to protect/suppress a Jinchuriki. Chunin level is an underestimation. They could have passed these exams years ago. Their teamwork was also a deciding factor. The Sand siblings were incredibly synchronized. Temari could deflect all his projectiles. Konkuro's puppet could counter his ink creatures. Sai's biggest, a large humanoid summon, performed well against the puppet. But Temari had turned the wind sharp, and repeatedly torn into the homunculus. Now it was tattered, and could barely walk. May I advise you both surrender? Sai offered. Temari snorted. Nope. Hey, you're one of those asshats that works for Danzo, right? Isn't he our inside guy? Why are you attacking us? Destabilizing the village and killing the Hokage was the primary goal. Sai explained. One secondary was to capture the One-Tails, possibly extracting it and putting it in someone loyal to Leaf. That treacherous motherfucker, Konkuro said, almost appreciatively. Sai saw an opportunity to emotionally destabilize them. And besides, it's not even the Kage my master is consorting with. You what? Temari blinked. You've been following the orders of a dangerous missing nin. Sai smiled. Orochimaru had your father killed 3 months ago. Strange, that even his children couldn't even recognize his doppelganger. It got to them. Both froze, and exchanged glances. That was when Sai struck. He darted at Konkuro at top speed, swinging his sword for the boy's neck. Their disorientation only bought him a moment, but that time was significant for a ninja. Temari swung her fan, and the wind was able to catch him before he reached her brother, so he was forced to re-angle his strike, drawing his blade across Konkuro's face rather than his throat. The puppet master howled. Sai landed on, crashed into, another tree, then grunted, as he realized the girl had slipped some sharpened wind into her attack. There was blood on his chest. That's it. Temari growled. Now you're dead. Try going for either of my brothers again, and see where it gets you. Sis. Checked Konkuro, hands on his face, covering his wound. His voice was remarkably calm. I'ma need you to point me at him. Listen for the sounds of dying root members. She told him. And send your puppet there. Sai readied himself. He had been careless, and would be slower now, while she was angry. That could be used against her if she was careless, but Konkuro hadn't been taken out of the fight like he had hoped, so their teamwork was still intact. He considered retreating, and hoping that Naruto and Sasuke had successfully apprehended the Jinchuriki. Fortunately, he didn't have to. There was a flash, and Temari's next wave of cutting wind collided harmlessly onto a sheet of blue ice. Haku dropped down from the sky and manifested a slope of ice beneath himself, skidding downwards until he had shed enough of his momentum to safely stop. Sorry to interrupt, he began, fishing Senbon from his sleeves. But I figured if there was a fight occurring I should lend a hand. He paused and looked across at the Konoha genin, a pale boy with dark hair and clothing that revealed a distracting amount of midriff. Hello, he said, smiling slyly. Hello, said the boy, looking him up and down. I'm trying to apprehend these two, they're the children of the cage. High priority targets. Nice. Haku dispelled his ice wall, revealing an angry but wary-looking Temari. Where are Naruto and Sasuke? Up ahead, fighting the third child. Sai told her. I have to ask. How exactly did you get here? Haku grinned and looked up. I hitched a ride. Stop enjoying this. Stop enjoying this. Ahahaha. I'm on a massive fucking frog. Toad. Sasuke and Gamahiro were apparently having a whale of a time. He had anchored his legs to the head of the blue toad and was generally just enjoying the ride. As his mount jumped around, swung its oversized swords all over the place. The last time Naruto had ridden a toad, it had been Gamabunta in the dark, and the toad had been drunk and he had come close to being sick, so he was a little less enthusiastic. Or the giant sand tanuki wearing Gaara as a headpiece might be the thing dampening his mood, hard to say. Water bullet, declared Gameken, launching his jutsu just as Gamahiro made another slashing attempt. The water blast cancelled out Shukaku's own air attack, giving Gamahiro an opening to completely lop off his arm. The sand that made it up fell to the ground with a thump, and a new limb almost immediately grew in its place. Shukaku then used it to sock Gamahiro in the face, sending him crashing backwards through the trees. Are we hurting it? Naruto asked Gameken. The sand avatar's just temporary, groused the toad. And he's got more chakra than both of us and Gamabunta combined. We're doing nothing. Then what can we do? Naruto asked, exasperated. Kill the Jinchuriki. The frog deadpanned. What? Or just wake him up. That'd probably work. Alright, how do we do that? Hell if I know. Gameken shouted, before jumping away from another air bullet. I'll try and get you close. He charged in again. If anything, Shukaku had gotten bigger since the start of the fight, though Naruto didn't really have much to scale it against. Gamahiro was forced to jump to get towards its face, which put him in a terrible position. Shukaku snapped forwards at the blue toad, biting down on his throat, eliciting a cry of pain. Gamahiro desummoned. Now's our chance. Gameken shouted, jumping up while Shukaku was still clearing the smoke from his face. Naruto tensed, ready to jump up to Gaara's unconscious form. Then he spotted a black shape falling in front of the sand. Sasuke! He shouted, then immediately jumped down towards his friend. Angling his body towards the profusely swearing genin, he was able to catch him halfway to the floor. Naruto! Sasuke shouted, you absolute maniac, now we're both falling. Naruto rolled his eyes. Yeah, but at least I can. There was a blur, and they were both caught up in a red hand. You're both crazy, declared the toad. But his impromptu rescue put him in a terrible position. Shukaku spun in place, and batted Gameken with his tail, sending him flying across the forest. Naruto and Sasuke WTH him. The toad crashed amongst the trees with a groan, opening his fist to reveal the humans inside. You okay? He asked. We're fine. Naruto shouted back. You. Terrible. Gameken tried to sit up, but failed. If he hits me with anything else, I'll desummon. Across the forest, Shukaku fell forwards until he was on all fours. His mouth opened, and red and blue motes of light appeared there. Yeah, that'd do it. Gameken growled. Biju bomb. What's a? Naruto paused. Okay, the Kyuubi does not want to get hit by that, we need to move. I can't. Gameken grimaced. You'll have to jump. Go. In Shukaku's mouth, the light collected to form a purple sphere of condensed energy. Naruto picked up Sasuke, I'm getting real sick of this. Yeah, me too. And started running across Gameken's arm. Shukaku fired the Biju bomb. Naruto jumped. There was a bird-like screech. The purple orb tore across the forest, destroying everything in its path, and it was so massive that it looked like Naruto and Sasuke were going to be caught in it before they could land and escape into the forest. That was when both heard a very familiar voice from behind them. Riding in on the back of an owl summon, white eyes glinting, Hinata reached out a hand and snagged the pair out of the sky, dropping them on the back of the bird with her. Need a lift? She asked, casually. The Biju bomb went straight through Gameken, immediately desummoning him. It didn't even explode yet, which was good, as it allowed Hinata's summon to flap desperately and pull her up above the curve of the murder sphere. Hinata. Naruto gaped. What or how did you what? Bird. She explained, succinctly. I dropped Haku off in the forest, he should be taking out Temari and Kankuro now. Naruto. She turned around to face him. He winced a little, recalling how their last conversation had gone. Then she dropped into a kowtow. I'm so sorry, she said. He blinked. What? I'm sorry, she repeated, not looking up. Chakra made it easy enough to maintain a bow while riding a 10-foot owl. I didn't mean to say what I said, it was a misunderstanding, but that doesn't matter because I still hurt your feelings and I was too scared to come talk to you about it because I almost killed Sasuke an hour earlier and I didn't trust myself not to hurt you and, she paused for breath. Hinata. I'm just so sorry, she finished. Naruto just looked at her for a moment. Then he sighed. Hinata. It's okay. She still didn't lift from the bow. But it was dumb of me to think you would suddenly start hating me because I'm a Jinchuriki when you already knew it, he scratched the back of his head. So that was kinda my fault but I know you don't like it when I blame myself. He added, hurriedly, before she could say something. So how about we just say that I'm sorry, you're sorry, and everyone forgives everyone else. He squatted down until he was at her level, and pulled her chin up so he could see her face. I mean, come on. Friends do stuff like that, and we're friends, aren't we? She stared at him, tears in her eyes. Then something very strange happened. Hinata laughed. She fell backwards onto her haunches and crossed her arms over her stomach, breaking out into a fit of giggling. It was euphoric, slightly crazy, and frankly the most adorable thing Naruto had ever seen. He didn't have any time to say anything before she had thrown herself forwards, wrapping him up in a full-body hug, burying her head in his shoulder. Thank you, she whispered. He blinked. He looked across at Sasuke and mouthed what? I don't know. Sasuke gestured back. I guess this means I made you smile, right? Naruto finished. It was the only thing he could think to say. I guess so, she whispered back. As much as I hate to interrupt your moment. The owl they were riding on spoke up. May I remind you all that we are being attacked by a Biju. I've been evading it for 2 minutes. Naruto and Hinata quickly broke apart, blushing. Beneath them all Shukaku roared, the fight music started playing, and everyone jolted back into action. Right. Got it. Naruto clapped his hands together. Team is back together baby. Woo. New plan. Mr. Bird, fly towards the big murder sand monster. Do as he says. Hinata instructed, acting as though nothing had happened and walking forwards to crouch by the owl's head. Sasuke dropped down beside her as the owl fell into a steep dive. Just so you know, I forgive you for trying to kill me because I was also trying to kill you and we were both being manipulated. Thank you. Hinata replied, in a surprisingly genuine tone of voice. Thanks for betraying your entire clan rather than killing me. No problem. He replied, conversationally. So do we actually have a plan? Sure we do. Naruto shouted over the steadily rising wind, the owl plummeting towards Shukaku. Sasuke. Fireballs in its face, blind it. On it. Sasuke replied, then began running through the great fireball hand seals. Hinata. Naruto turned to her. Fly the owl and look cute. I what? And as for me, Naruto shrugged. Well, since I can't do anything else. He leaned backwards and kicked off the owl. Hinata shouted his name but he had already gone, diving straight towards Shukaku's head. Sasuke had already started bombarding the monster's eyes with fireballs, leaving it blind and Naruto with a straight shot at Gaara on its forehead. Or he would have, if he hadn't mistimed his jump. He had overshot. Son of a. Hell no. I'm done being a screw-up. I made a dramatic speech and everything. He reached out towards Gaara, reaching for the power that had cropped up a matter of minutes earlier. It responded. Blue-yellow chains manifested around his arms and blasted forwards, burying themselves in the sand of Shukaku's forehead. He fell past, and the chains went taut, almost jerking his arms out of his sockets as they began to convert his downwards momentum into lateral speed. The chains seemed to damage Shukaku's control over the sand. As Naruto began to swing, they began to cut through the sand that made up the side of the Biju's face, then its neck. His arc turned vertical again and the chains disappeared, as the best part of Shukaku's face disintegrated, cut off from the rest to its body. Naruto quickly summoned another shadow clone in mid-air, then kicked off it, using the momentum to throw himself towards Shukaku's rapidly reforming head. He landed on the sand, stumbled, caught himself, then threw himself up the slope towards Gaara's limp, unconscious upper body. The grains swirled around his feet, trying to suck him in with every step he took. I get it, you've been through a lot lately. Naruto panted. But this is not. He took another step. The time. And another. For a nap. He burst free of the sand and lunged for Gaara. He was feeling diplomatic, so he punched him in the face. Gaara's head rocked back. It had been a harder punch than Naruto had intended, and his eyes snapped open, darting around wildly. Naruto. He whispered. Beneath them, Shukaku roared. No. Don't put me back. Don't you dare. But it was too late for the Biju. Gaara was awake and kicking, literally, fighting to free himself of the sand around his lower body. The avatar was crumbling, Shukaku's newly reformed face practically melting as his body fell to the earth, swamping the surrounding forest in a small tsunami of sand. All that was left was a large owl flapping in the air. Quote. Do you think he can actually function without being Sadramtic? Sasuke remarked. Atop the mound of sand, the fight continued in a much more primitive manner. Die. Gaara screamed, voice hoarse, swinging punch after punch like a man, still possessed. Naruto blocked them all impassively. Gaara had clearly been relying on the protection of the sand around him all his life, his taijutsu was non-existent. I have to kill you. Gaara continued. You have to die. Why? Naruto asked, still blocking. You must. Gaara spat at him, panting. Turns out he was also incredibly unfit, for a ninja. You must give my life meaning. Tired of the farce, Naruto caught the next punch, and the next, so he held both of Gaara's fists in his. Then he fell forwards and enveloped his fellow Jinchuriki in a hug. Gaara struggled for a moment, then went limp. Kill me, he whispered. I am getting real sick of people asking me that. Naruto sighed. Look, this may sound crazy, so bear with me, but you could always. Not. Define your existence with murder. But I'm a monster. Gaara tensed. You have a monster in you. Naruto corrected. Not the same thing. You can tell, because I haven't tried to destroy the Leaf Village. How can you possibly control it so well? Gaara asked. Naruto shrugged. Way I see it, the Kyuubi isn't a curse. It's my tenant. It stays quiet, doesn't make a mess, and sometimes I make it pay rent. Naruto paused. Oh damn, I'm saving that line for later, that was amazing. I have tried. Gaara told him. I have tried kindness. No matter what I do, any attempt is met with fear and hate. Pretty sure Tamari liked the fox you got her. Naruto pointed out. Look, at the end of the day, you can either go on murdering as a pastime and being just sad. Or you can actually try. Be nice, and keep being nice until people are nice back. Be happy. Worked for me. Gaara straightened. Naruto released the hug and stepped back, cautiously. Some of the sand from around them flew up into the air, pulling together and reshaping into the gourd Gaara always carried. It affixed itself to his back, and some more sand flowed into it until it was full. As heir apparent to the cage, he said, looking for all the world like nothing had happened. I issue a formal, unconditional surrender. He paused. I think I would like to go and see my family now. Chapter 30. Aftermath 2. The Power Vacuum. The purple barrier fell and Itachi was in, dodging past all the water and massive wooden structures, appearing immediately next to the only human form on the roof. Hiruzen Sarutobi was laying on the ceramic tiles, eyes closed. There was blood on his chest. Hokage-sama, Itachi shouted, shaking the man by the shoulders, desperately. Hiruzen opened one eye. Itachi. Just a random thought. Do you think perhaps exiling Orochimaru from the village was a mistake? Itachi didn't waste any time with banter. He picked the Hokage up immediately and dashed away, sprinting for the hospital. Don't bother. Hiruzen sighed, as the wind whipped at his uniform. I've been stabbed, I'm old, and I just sold my soul to the Reaper. Or at least most of it. I'm not sure how much death wants for two undead and a pair of arms. Oh good, he's delusional. With respect, Hokage-sama, that sounds like an excuse. He. Hiruzen chuckled, though it quickly turned into a cough. Well, at least I can say I just beat the first and second Hokage in a fight. Oh really, not the fourth? Itachi muttered. No. Hiruzen sighed. He sealed himself into the Reaper already, so Orochimaru couldn't summon him. With respect sir, shut the fuck up while I take you to. Enough with the hospital, put me down Itachi. Hiruzen sighed. I should have died when the Kyuubi attacked 12 years ago. It looks like I'm out of borrowed time. Grimacing, Itachi stopped his mad dash into central Konoha. Actually, if you could take me up the Hokage monument, that would be nice. Asshole. Nevertheless, Itachi did as instructed. Another few seconds, and he sat the old man down on the bust of Namikaze Minato. That's better. Hiruzen sighed. If I'm going to die, I'd rather do it with a view. Your last seconds of life and you're using your guard as a valet service. Itachi rolled his eyes. Is there any point in asking what happened in there? I fought Orochimaru for 6 episodes. His arms are destroyed but he killed me. Fair enough. Hiruzen gestured, weakly. Look at it all, Itachi. What do you see? Itachi squinted. Some smashed houses and one massive frog. Your wit could cut the Susanoo, but let's be serious now, please. The Uchiha sighed, and sat down next to his master. I see my home. I see a lot of good people who are lucky to be alive, and a lot of good people who aren't. Quite so. Hiruzen nodded. I cannot claim I die with no regrets, nor can I claim that there is nothing else I wish to do, but I can claim that I have always done what I believed to be right for this village. Yet even that was a double-edged sword, because of what it has done to some of the individuals under my protection. We're talking about Naruto, aren't we? Among others. I'm also sorry for what has happened to your own family. To the Hyuga, to Minato, to my students. I have made quite a few mistakes. I know, sir. Itachi replied. Remember the part where I was responsible for roughly half those things? True. Hiruzen sighed. His grip on the stone beneath him had gradually slackened, until he was mostly laying on his side, looking out over the village. It's not mine. He muttered, mostly to himself. It was never mine. Nor Minato's, nor Tobirama's, nor even Hashirama's. It belongs to the people. To every soul who lives within its houses, walks its streets. That's what the will of fire means, what it really means. Do you understand, Itachi? Yes, sir. He kept his face stoic. I understand. Good. Then keep it safe, Itachi. And do a better job than I did. If I may ask, Hokage-sama. Itachi coughed into his fist. There's one last thing you could do. If you had a recommendation for your successor, it would save a lot of drama. Of course, of course. Hiruzen closed his eyes. But I don't think there will be much contention. The obvious best choice, to replace me, has to be. He trailed off. Quote. Sir? Itachi asked. There was no response. He reached forwards and put his hand to the third Hokage's neck. No pulse. Quote. Motherfucker. Some distance away, Kimimaro picked himself up from the charred, blackened remains of an empty house on Konoha's outskirts. He shook himself, and the outer layer of bone he had formed fell to the ground. Then he began walking off into the woods. 1 hour later, the battle was over. The sound ninja were all dead or missing, and the sand ninja were all dead or had surrendered when they had learned their kage was an imposter. For that reason the village was mostly quiet, and even from within T&I, Tamari could hear the wingbeats and cry of some large bird outside. She looked up. Oh, that was my ride. The ice boy, Haku, spoke, standing up and heading for the door. I'll go check they're okay. Prisoners, please remain prisoners. Sigh. Catch you later. The murderous, treacherous, lying bastard smiled and inclined his head as Haku left. As prison cells went, it wasn't the worst Tamari had stayed in. Her position as the Kazecage's child lent her some legitimacy, so when Sai and Haku had brought her and her brother in, battered and bruised, they hadn't been subjected to nearly as much abuse as she had expected. None at all, even. She looked across at Konkuro, sat in the corner of the room. He didn't raise his head. The door opened a few minutes later and she jumped to her feet, shooting a glare at Sai when he put his hand threateningly on his sword. Her brother walked in. Gaara. She started forwards, hesitated, and then froze as Gaara moved towards her and hugged her. It happened so suddenly and was over so quickly she barely had time to register it had happened. Wah. Hello, sister. He stepped back and inclined his head. Are you all right? Tamari looked up over Gaara's shoulder. Team 7 was stood in the doorway behind him, Naruto sending a cheerful wave. Quote. I'm fine. She told her brother. Nothing too serious. Konkuro though. She gestured. The eldest Sand sibling finally looked up. Though, looked, may have been a misnomer. A white medical bandage was tied around his face, covering his eyes. Even since they had reapplied them 10 minutes ago, more blood had seeped into the fabric. What is this? Gaara asked, calmly. Nothing much, bro, sighed Konkuro. He pointed at Sai. This sneaky motherfucker blinded me. I see. Gaara turned to the guilty party. He doesn't, though, Sai mentioned with a smile. Cracks appeared in the gourd. Gaara, Naruto warned. I am a prisoner of war, and wouldn't violate that protection with an unprovoked attack. Gaara assured him, not looking away from Sai. That said, should we end up free? Konkuro, would you like me to avenge you or if would you rather do it yourself? Oh, definitely involve me when the time comes. Informed Konkuro, smiling darkly. Excellent. Would you like a hug, brother? Not right now. No. Very well. There is a lot of carefully contained aggression in this room right now, Sasuke stated, from the door. And I'ma be honest, I'm starting to get uncomfortable. Sai stretched his arms and began to leave. Well, I trust you three and the rest of T and I to keep them contained. Congratulations on apprehending them, Team 7. You're not just an ordinary genin, are you? Hinata said, looking at Sai carefully. He smiled blankly at her. Not quite. No. A word to the uninitiated. They may try to manipulate you. Ignore anything they say. He left the room. Tamari waited a good 10 seconds before petulantly blurting out. Sai's working for Danzo, who's working with Orochimaru, who killed the Kazekage and betrayed the Leaf Village. We know. The Konoha trio chorused. Tamari blinked. You do. Kakashi told us. Sasuke explained. We don't know the whole story, but basically Danzo is an asshat who's been plotting against the Hokage for years, but we can't just kill him because it would cause a bunch of political problems. Naruto's been trying to seduce Sai to the light side for like 2 months. I think we may want to leave the seducing to Haku, actually. Mentioned Hinata, staring off into the middle distance. Really? Naruto blinked. Why? Well, I can see them with the Byakugan right now and oh. The veins disappeared from her eyes and she blushed profusely. The Kazekage is dead? Asked Gaara, quietly, completely ignoring Team 7. Tamari grimaced, and nodded. Orochimaru replaced him. Months ago, from what Sai said, but that might have been just psychological warfare. No, in order to organize this he would have needed at least weeks of preparation time. Gaara corrected her. The Kazekage has been dead for some time. You don't sound upset. Tamari tried. The Kazekage repeatedly had assassins sent after me to test my power and control. Gaara said, emotionlessly. I have decided to try caring about people, and see how it works out. I will not attempt such with our deceased leader. He was no father of mine. Everyone in the room, bar Konkuro, shuddered at that. Naruto, thanks for bringing my brother back. Tamari said. But now it's all over. I don't suppose you could do something about my fox. 10 minutes later, Shikamaru wandered, holding a large bag but looking as bored as ever, into T&I. After some talking with the guards, he was led into the room housing the three Sand siblings. Yo! He began. Temari and Gaara looked up. Kankuro tensed. There was a squeak, and out of the bag jumped a small red fox that scampered over and jumped into Temari's lap. Uzu. She squealed 2 octaves higher than a self-respecting shinobi should have, and scooped it up into her arms. I also brought some food for him, and some more stuff from your apartment I figured you might need. Thank you. Temari said, looking up at him and blushing. Thanks a lot. Damn right, that bag was heavy. Shikamaru smiled a little, trying to convey that he hadn't meant it, and turned to go. Wait, called Kankuro over his shoulder. Did you know? Shikamaru turned, with a surprised face. About the attack. Kankuro extrapolated. Don't fuck with me, there's no reason to hide it now. You knew, didn't you? Shikamaru waited. For long seconds. Then, with the most innocent expression on his face, I had no idea. Don't you think if I'd known I would have done something? You. Kankuro made a strangled sound, and stopped. Sorry about him. Temari winced. He gets paranoid. Don't worry about it. See you later. Shikamaru waved, and left. A few minutes later, Kankuro found his own planning map in the bottom of the bag, red string included. It was dotted with extra notes, helpful advice on deduction, and rationality book recommendations. He howled. Another hour later. No. Naruto gulped. Yes. Confirmed Jiraiya. Sadly, Itachi brought his body in about an hour ago. The old man. Naruto clenched his fists. Who the hell beat the Hokage? Orochimaru did. Sighed Jiraiya. I think Sarutobi would be proud it was his student who did him in, if it wasn't like this. Team 7 had, the Uchiha compound being off limits, congregated in Naruto's small flat, or more specifically sprawled onto his sofa that was nowhere near big enough for them. Sasuke was delicately perched on one arm, and Hinata had used the opportunity to squeeze particularly close to Naruto. Nobody called her out on it. Jiraiya was sat in Seiza before them all, with Kakashi leaning on the wall in one corner, absently toying with a kunai and looking into the middle distance. So what do we do? Asked Hinata. For now, nothing. Jiraiya admitted. What? Don't get any bright ideas. Kakashi warned from the corner. Remember last time Orochimaru ran circles around your whole team? There's nothing we can do. Jiraiya explained. Itachi's over with the council right now while they desperately try to figure out what to do next. Both us and Suna are down a cage, dozens of ninja and civilians are dead and nobody has a clue what to do about the Chunin exams. The last thing on our minds right now is going after a missing nin we've spent a decade failing to track down. Fair enough. Speaking of the Chunin exams. Sasuke looked up. What's happening about that? They better not be cancelled because if I went through all that shit and don't get promoted. That's a good question. Jiraiya crossed his arms. The final decision generally falls to the cage of the host village, with advice from the proctors and political pressure from the other villages. With Hiruzen dead, well, I can't imagine we'll get a replacement anytime. The door slammed open so fast the cheap rotted thing fell off its hinges, revealing Itachi in the doorway. You three, with me. He pointed at them. Hinata, Sasuke, game face on. You will not believe what's going on in there. 1 minute earlier. We are in a time of crisis. Intoned Fugaku Uchiha, looking out across the clans, representatives. Konoha cannot appear weakened by the invasion or we will invite reprisal. A new cage must be chosen quickly. We are in agreement there. Said the head of the Aburame. The problem. The lack of available candidates. One obvious solution would be one of the Sanin. Mentioned a Yamanaka. Except that Jiraiya is a bumbling oaf, Tsunade is a drunk, and Orochimaru just killed the last one. Drawled one of the Nara. Indeed. We need a ninja who is strong, wise, has a known reputation, and political clout. Fugaku summarized. Fortunately, we have such a candidate. Is that so? Asked an Akamichi. Who? Fugaku kept his face perfectly blank. Well, myself, of course. The council meeting broke into chaos. You can't be serious. Said the shadow clone that had just replaced Itachi, stood against one wall. Now would not be the time for jokes, son. Fugaku replied, simply, before turning back to the crowd. I am the head of the Uchiha. I'm the strongest among my clan. He ignored the Itachi clone's snort. I'm more than experienced enough to deal with the responsibilities. I was a candidate for 4th Hokage, if you recall, though of course I deferred to Minato's brilliance. Lord Uchiha is also a veteran of the Third Great Ninja War. Spoke up one of the politicians in Danzo's pocket. The power of Wicked Eye Fugaku is unquestioned, even in the other villages. That pre-planned statement removed the psychological block for most of the other clans, who began to mutter amongst themselves. They were considering it. A decision must be made soon. Fugaku added some pressure. And there are no viable alternatives. Unless someone can come up with a valid complaint. Oh, I'm certain I can rack my brains for one or two. Echoed a commanding voice from the entrance. Fugaku, along with the rest of the council, looked towards its source. Then his eyes widened in genuine surprise. Hinata Hyuga entered the meeting hall with a purposeful stride. She hadn't had time to change out of her combat clothes, which were damaged and torn in places, but she liked the effect. Stood at her left hand was Naruto. He looked like absolute garbage, but he had managed to get the red glow in his eyes, and they were darting from noble to noble with a feral look. Sasuke was stood on her right, and he at least had been taught proper posture. It very clearly indicated he was with her. Sorry for my lateness, she called out, navigating her way towards the center of the room. Nobody thought fit to inform me of the meeting. I was helping my team restrain an enemy Jinchuriki, but I assure you it didn't fatigue me so much that I cannot attend. There was more mumbling amongst the crowd. Hinata knew what must be on their minds. First, everyone here had seen Shukaku on the skyline. Everyone here remembered what had happened last time a Biju had been loosed on Konoha. But while 12 years ago the 4th Hokage had to sacrifice himself, this time a genin team had successfully neutralized the threat. Second, Sasuke. The fact that he was stood with her, and not with his father, wasn't something the room would fail to notice. Third, Naruto. Everyone here knew who he was and what he was. There were rumors about his exploits already. Hinata had heard, among other things, that he had developed the Mangekyo Sharingan and laser beam release due to being the reincarnation of at least the sage of 6 paths Son Ashura and the first Hokage. Unlocked a separate ancient Uzumaki bloodline limit even though the Uzumaki weren't supposed to have one of those. Gotten into a rock-off with Itachi Uchiha, won, then used it as a ritual to form a summoning contract with Son Goku, not the Biju, the comic book character. And then gone to fight the demonic ice dragon terrorizing the land of Wave. He had then kissed the dragon, making it transform into the Hidden Mist's ice princess, or prince. The rumors here diverged, which he had promptly seduced and smuggled back into Konoha. The fact that Hinata knew 2 or 3 of those things were at least partially true terrified her, and even the great ninja clans would be aware of Naruto's growing reputation. And here he was, having agreed to forego the collar, but still looking very much under her control. I do not believe the council has need of your team's services at this time, Miss Hinata. Fugaku told her, sternly. That's, Lady Hyuga, to you. Hinata tutted. As I'm certain most of the assembled realize, I'm here representing my clan. It would be remiss to hold discussions on the new Hokage without me. She wrinkled her nose. And unwise, I see, given the decisions being considered. Fugaku stared her down. We have already decided. You have decided. Hinata cut across him, putting a finger in the air. Are you getting in practice pretending to factor in the opinions of others? You apparently plan to do so a lot. I'm afraid I have no idea what you mean. He replied, probably attempting to lure her into a trap of some sort. I don't believe you, but if you insist. She turned away from him so her posture faced the wider crowd, who were currently shocked to silence by her sheer audacity. The Uchiha clan are the largest in Konoha. She told them. And unless my inheritance is gaining more interest than I've been told, they're also the richest and most influential. Now, suppose the leader of said clan were to become Hokage. She turned back to Fugaku, giving him a flat stare. He would effectively control the entire village. That is an exaggeration. Tell me, how many clans do you need on your side to win a majority vote? She interrupted again. 1 or 2. 2 smaller clans, 1 big one. Sasuke reminded her. Yes, thank you. And how many of those meets could the Hokage influence, or even overrule? Konoha's Hokage has a lot of internal power relative to the other villages, as so far ours have all been blessed with qualities such as basic morale principle. We have forgotten what would happen were we ruled by someone with nothing vaguely resembling it. I don't like your tone, girl. Fugaku almost snarled. She smiled brightly at him. Once again, Lady Hyuga. Watch your manners, Lord Uchiha. And I notice you have failed to deny any of my accusations. Because your points are moot. Fugaku ground out. Strong leadership is what's needed, and it's needed now. In the absence of other viable candidates. On the contrary, Lord. Do not interrupt me again, Lady Hyuga. My apologies. She inclined her head. But you just made at least 2 incorrect statements. Primary among which is that we do not need to make a decision now. We don't even need to make a decision by next week. If we don't have a Hokage in a time like this, the other villages will think we're weak. Declared an Akamichi. No, they will think we're stupid. Hinata explained. Pause, and think. If we announce our new cage within days of this massacre, we will seem hasty and foolish. We should probably have a Hokage should another village declare war on us, but other than that, the only real concern is how much paperwork will build up. There was tittering among the crowd, and sensing her moment, Hinata raised her voice. I counsel patience. Take time to mourn our old Hokage, assess the other candidates, and make a decision that won't ruin the entire village. I am in agreement with the Lady Hyuga, said the Nara rep. Hinata noted with some amusement it was Shikimaru's father. Reckless action will lead to even more trouble. There was mumbled agreement from the collected. Fugaku glared across at Hinata. Naruto bristled at her side, but she held up a hand in front of him, and he stepped back. Another act probably, but one that she should not have enjoyed so much. Very well, said Fugaku. We should all return to our duties. But this discussion will continue at a later time. Of course. Hinata agreed, hopefully with clearer heads. With that, she turned her back and walked away. They made it halfway out of the building before Sasuke leaned over her shoulder. So, daughter, we staying at your place or Naruto's? Because I get a feeling I might not be welcome home tonight. Chapter 31. The one thing you can't replace. Tell the story. Which one? The one with the party in the middle of the Chunin exams. Oh yeah, that one. Oh, you guys will love this. An adult Naruto made a beckoning motion, and the 10 or so other ninja gathered closer. Alright, so, he coughed dramatically, gotta give you all some context for this first. There was this clan elder who worked for our village, his name was Fugaku Uchiha, and his son Sasuke Uchiha went to our ninja academy. And Lord Uchiha was an asshole. And one weekend he and his wife decided to leave town. Which you should never do. If you are an asshole. So after the Chunin exam preliminaries, Sasuke Uchiha decided to throw a party at his dad's house, and everyone around the village heard about it, and we all got up individually and thought, okay, let's go over there, and destroy the place. I walked into this party, everyone I had ever met was there, and everyone was drinking like it was the end of the world. People were drinking like it was the Third Shinobi War and a medic nin was coming to saw our legs off. It was totally unsupervised. We were like Biju without Jinchuriki, we were running wild. I walked down to the basement, they had a pool table in the basement, Shoji took a running start and threw his body onto the pool table and broke it in half. Kiba found out which room was Fugaku's and went upstairs and took a shit on his summoning scrolls. So the party was going great. I'm standing in the basement and I'm holding a cup of sake, you've seen movies, and I'm standing there. And I'm holding a cup of sake and the Kyuubi's starting to break loose, so I'm starting to black out. And Hinata said something like, something, Anbu. And in a brilliant moment of word association, I yelled, fuck da Anbu. Fuck da Anbu. And everyone else joined in. 100. Drunk. Genin. Yelling, fuck da Anbu. With the confidence of Jonin who have like already been to T and I and aren't afraid of it anymore. You know that like, I served my Ryo, you come and take me. Confidence, but Genin. Now the reason Hinata had said, something, Anbu, was because the Anbu were there. So Hitaki Kakashi walked down the stairs, and got to the bottom of the basement and looked out over a sea of drunk toddlers yelling, fuck da Anbu, in his face. And he was almost depressed. He was like, woo-ow. And then he leaned into his walkie-talkie and went, get the paddy wagon. And my friend Lee, who is now a father, this man now has a baby, he grabbed a bottle, smashed it on the ground, and yelled, "Scatter." And everyone ran in a different direction, we all ran in different directions. It was like that moment in the Fourth War when Madara dropped that meteor and everyone ran in different directions, we all ran in different directions. I ran into the sparring room, and I jumped on a training dummy, and I crawled out through a window into the gardens, and now I'm running through the Uchiha gardens, and there's this big red toad called Gamabunta, and I thought, I've never ridden a toad that big before. And then I woke up at home. On Monday, I went to training because that's what we did back then. And I'm walking into the training grounds, and who do I see but Sasuke Uchiha. And he says to me, "Hey, were you at my party on Saturday?" And I said, "No, you know, like a liar." And he said, "Things got really out of hand. Someone broke the pool table. Someone took a shit on my dad's scrolls. Someone got into a rock off with my big brother Itachi. But the worst thing," he says, "the worst thing is that someone stole these old antique paintings of my great-grandfather Madara, and my parents are freaking out about it." And I had that thought. That only blackout drunks, and Jiraiya of the Sannin can have. Did I do that? I figured no, I wouldn't have done that. But I was never sure. Until a 3-year timeskip later. Relax. I'm playing video games with this kid named Shikamaru that we also went to Ninja Academy with. It's 3 years later in Shippuden, we're Chunin by now. We're playing video games for a couple hours and then Shikamaru says to me, "Hey, come here. I want to show you something." And then he takes me into his bedroom, and then he takes me into a side room off of his bedroom. Never a good thing to have. He shows me a tiny room that is covered wall to wall in stolen antique paintings from different clans' parties over the years. And I said, "Why?" In a whisper, still whispering, "Why do you do this?" And Shikamaru looked me in the eye, smirked, and said, "Because it's the one thing you can't replace. So that's why I don't drink anymore." And that's the end of that story, but that's crazy, right? Chapter 32. And behind door number 4. 8 years ago. Hey. Neji didn't bother cracking an eye open. He had his Byakugan off specifically to not see his surroundings, but couldn't misinterpret the ultralight footsteps that approached him. "Hey," Itachi replied, coming to sit down next to him. "The fuck are you doing up here?" Neji, again, didn't open his eyes. He was laid out flat on the rooftop of some building in central Konoha, and while he hadn't really been paying attention to his surroundings, he had a rough idea of what things looked like. Dark, he supposed. His internal clock made it 5:47. Couldn't sleep at home. Too loud. He heard Itachi tense. "If you tell me your uncle was using that fucking..." "No." Neji cut him off. "The caged bird seal is not activated so trivially. But it was a row." "What about?" "Father insulted the hidden cloud." Neji summarized. "Big argument at the negotiating table. Hiyashi is furious about it. Seems out of character for your dad." Itachi remarked. He had been over and met Hisashi Hyuga more than once, and the two got along cordially. "It is. But, well," Neji sighed. "Father insulted the cloud politician because the cloud politician said, well, it's confusing, but long story short, do you remember that business we got up to in stone? On our first mission. I remember. This all started because of that." It was Itachi's turn to sigh. "Are you deadass blaming yourself for this? That's a pretty tenuous connection you're making. But not an incorrect one." "Oh, for." There was the distinct sound of the Uchiha slapping his forehead. "Okay. Open your eyes." Neji scowled. "No. Open 'em. No. I'm still asleep. Leave your damn Byakugan off and open your freaking eyes, or I'm going to cut them open." Neji sighed, and complied. To his surprise, it wasn't as dark as he'd thought. The sun had just started to rise, red and yellow light seeping in from the distant horizon. Itachi was sat next to him in his pajamas. "Is that it? Did you wake me up so I could appreciate the view?" "Kinda. Getting motivated by the beautiful sight of your village." "No. Didn't think so." Itachi pointed. "What's that?" "That's my compound." Neji replied. The Hyuga buildings looked as pristine as usual from this distance. "And what's in that compound?" "Father. Mother. Possibly uncle." Neji trailed off. "And?" Itachi encouraged. "Hinata." Neji muttered. "Who cannot?" At age whateveritis, scamper off into the village to avoid her parents' shouting match. I thought you were trying to make me feel less guilty. Neji remarked. I'm saying. Itachi replied, exasperating. Maybe you should stop worrying about things that are maybe kinda your fault, and pay attention to what's definitely your responsibility. Neji sighed. Then stood up. I'll go back and check on everyone. Attaboy. Itachi stood up with him. The treaty is going to happen on her birthday. Neji remarked. The one between Cloud and Leaf. Nobody's going to be there for her. Someone will. Itachi pointed out. Neji smiled. Yes. I suppose you're right. Present day. Hinata woke up gradually, over the course of what felt like hours but was actually only 10 minutes. Even after she became lucid, she felt absolutely no motivation to get up, perfectly content to shift around in place and stretch a little. She usually just viewed lie-ins as wastes of valuable daylight. The same could not be said for baths, but her duvet was feeling exceptionally comfortable today. Why? Oh, right. Team 7 had gone to Hinata's compound together, unanimously deciding that they didn't want to be alone after the really hectic day, and once again Naruto's flat had been too small. A whistle-stop, joking tour of the compound had ensued, after which they had agreed not to sleep in any of the other probably haunted bedrooms, and instead set up a sleepover in one of the living rooms. They had then stolen a bunch of pillows and duvets from throughout the compound, lit the fireplace, and sent out shadow clones to scrounge snacks from destroyed shops in the village. There had been smiles, laughs, a discussion on appropriate pajama etiquette. Right, yes, nakedness is bad, I'm sorry. Damn it, Hinata, learn basic social conventions. And despite Hinata having a genuinely wonderful time, there had been no karmic universal consequence for her being happy. Shocker. It was, in hindsight, an incredibly silly bias to be living under for her whole life, and she was glad to be rid of it. This didn't mean she was going to slack off training. She would have to work harder in fact, but right now. Hinata snuggled deeper into the covers and smiled. 10 more minutes. This particular pillow was turning into her new favorite. It was warm, and huggable, with nice blonde hair she could what? Squishy. Mumbled Naruto, pushing closer to her. Another few seconds passed, where she considered just staying in place, before her panic overrode her other basic driving forces and she let out a yelp, followed by a mad scramble to get out of the sheets that resulted with both her and Naruto hitting the floor with a loud thump. What the? He rubbed his eyes blearily. Hinata. What's breakfast? She said as she leapt to her feet, voice higher than usual with a blush on her cheeks. I was going to make breakfast. How do you like your eggs? In threes. He slithered back into the covers, gathering them around himself again. Morning, Hinata. Hey, don't you have, like, servants to do that for you? No, she said, casually. It's just me. Naruto looked at her in concern. Alone. You live alone. She got a little defensive. Yeah, but Naruto's limited social skills threw up red flags, but he pushed on. Isn't this where the thing happened? With the, I mean, if you don't want to. Yes. Hinata's voice was clipped. This was where my clan was killed. How would you like your eggs? Sorry. Naruto winced. Nobody ever really talks about it, especially not to me, so it just. It's fine. Hinata's voice had gone emotionless again, as she turned her back and moved towards the kitchen. Neji Hyuga, prodigy of the branch family, murdered every member of the Hyuga clan bar me, roughly 5 years ago. His motivation was never confirmed, but it's believed it was a desire to test his own power and superiority, or anger at the branch system he believed was unjust. The compound was cleaned thoroughly before I moved back in. How would you like your eggs? I'm not hungry. Naruto shot back. Hinata. You've been living here with no one but your family's ghosts for 5 years. Yes. She bit out. Quote. You're not okay, are you? No. She whispered. Do you want to talk about it? No. Do you? He paused. Do you want to come back under the covers? Quote. Yes. He made room and she slowly walked back to the sofa, before crawling into the duvet. Your compound isn't really right next to my house, is it? Naruto confirmed. No. She replied. Okay. He shrugged. Hinata smiled, and snuggled closer to him. The Hokage's funeral was a grand, if muted, affair. Pathetic fallacy had kicked in and a light drizzle fell from a dark gray sky, creating a haze of white noise in the background. Everyone wore black, and it was everyone. All of the great ninja clans had made an appearance, as well as most ninja who weren't on duty, and even a large crowd of civilians. The Anbu, in a rare breach of protocol, all allowed themselves to be seen, standing vigil atop nearby trees or buildings and silently watching the proceedings. Sarutobi Hiruzen had been a well-respected man. Fugaku was right about one thing. Jiraiya muttered, quietly. This is going to cause chaos. The old man has been a staple of the ninja world for decades. Now he's gone, the other villages are going to start re-evaluating their positions. Perhaps you were a bit hasty creating your fat porn author persona. Kakashi replied, just as quietly. I know you hate the Hokage job, but we're low on options. Don't suppose you have any powerful enemies you can vanquish right in sight of the whole village. Show off a little. I'll see what I can do. Jiraiya cracked a smile. Hey, I'm his student. I can probably wrangle a speech, use it as an opportunity to show myself, casting off my old vices, be the ninja he wants me to be. We're discussing using your mentor's funeral as a springboard for a promotion. Kakashi shook his head. We are going straight to hell. And the worst part is, he'd be the first to encourage us. Jiraiya sighed. Crazy old bastard. Aw shit, now that's two dead Hokage I'm in debt to. Great. Oh well, I'll make it up to them a better way. Really? How's that? Jiraiya just nodded across the crowd, at a trio of children stood with their heads down and hands clasped respectfully before them. You good, Naruto? Sasuke muttered. No. Naruto said back. Should I be? Don't think so. Were you too close? Dunno what I was to him. Naruto shrugged. But he was. I didn't have anyone else, you know. I mean, eventually I had you, and that was great, but for years he was the only one who actually cared about me. Still a little pissed at Jiraiya for never showing up even though he apparently knew my mum. I'm sorry. Hinata told him, from his other side. Why's that? He looked across at her. You didn't do it. You've known what it's like to live without family. Now you know what it's like to lose one. I'm sorry I couldn't spare you it. Hinata's voice was dry. No, I mean it's like it's not. Naruto sniffed once, and blinked a few times. Well, I've still got you guys, right? He looked sideways at them, and they both nodded. Whatever you need, said Sasuke. Whenever you need it, said Hinata. Despite everything, he beamed. Before they could stop him, he reached an arm around both their shoulders and pulled them close. There was some struggling, but he was still way physically stronger than them, and eventually both relented into the team hug. Thanks guys. Just. Thanks. So what now? Sasuke asked. What do we do now he's gone? Naruto looked forwards. Sarutobi Hiruzen's gravestone was a simple thing. A stone cuboid bearing his name, dates of birth and death, and a philosophical quote that could be interpreted as a sex joke if you squinted. It was no bigger than the graves of any other ninja who died defending the village. His will had demanded nothing else. We make him proud, Naruto decided. Then he smiled. And then we meet whoever's keeping the hat warm for me. 1 hour later. So, game time. Jiraiya clapped his hands together. What Naruto was starting to call the squad, Team 7, Haku, Kakashi, Jiraiya and Itachi, had convened back in Hinata's living room. Are we finally going to explain why I was resisting Fugaku so forcefully back in the council hall? Hinata asked. Because you didn't even spend 30 seconds explaining the situation. I was flying completely blind in there. Hinata has a point. Sasuke added. I know you hate him bro, but, well, he is my dad. I feel kinda bad. I have my own personal reasons. Itachi admitted. Suffice to say I will go to great lengths to stop the Uchiha clan taking over Konoha. But if you want something more concrete, then I have something. He reached into his pocket and drew out 2 pieces of paper. Tell me, do you think any of you made Chunin? Naruto's eyes widened. Oh yeah. Completely forgot about that. I assumed the exams were cancelled. Haku mentioned. Not quite. Kakashi explained. Obviously the Naruto-Gaara match was interrupted even though you technically won. Naruto dropped back down into his seat, appeased. Kakashi continued. And they aren't going to hold the final match now, but all the matches up till then still counted, and it would probably be good for publicity to have some people promoted out of this disaster. Problem is, who? Itachi picked up, waving the papers for emphasis. These are the recommendations the two Kage wrote down during Naruto's fight with Gaara, which you did win. Naruto, we all believe you. One is just Hinata's and Sasuke's names in big capital letters underlined a bunch of times, but we now know that was Orochimaru. Creepy motherfucker. The other one was written by our Kage, and it lists Naruto, Sasuke, Hinata, and Shikamaru as Chunin worthy. Kinda anti-Suna, don't you think? Sasuke muttered. They invaded. They forfeit the exam. Naruto waved him off. So, what? Does that mean we pass? Nope. Itachi grimaced. Sorry team, but the final decision goes to the hosting village's Kage. And we don't have one. But he just. Naruto flailed at the paper, before falling back into a pout. Not fair. He complained. Quite. Kakashi summarized. The final decision will go to whoever becomes the new Kage. Now, if that's Fugaku Uchiha, we're fucked. Sasuke realized, eyes wide. He pointed to his teammates. At least, you two are fucked. He hates you both. We know. They chorused. And whether or not I pass depends entirely on how pissed he is about my stunt against Hinata. Nope, not having it. Sasuke looked up to Itachi. Who else is there? Ain't that the question? Jiraiya chuckled. Well, father did a decent job of outlining the requirements. Itachi explained. Most important is to be powerful, Kage level powerful, able to beat up groups of Jonin at once. They need to be intelligent, though that isn't entirely important as they concede decisions to their staff or the council if they have to. In fact, most records imply the first Hokage wasn't exactly the sharpest tool in the shed. Naruto started whistling All-Star. Sasuke slapped him. And they need to be well known. Appointing a nobody to the position will warrant dismissal and disrespect. So other than Fugaku, option 1 is. Itachi sighed. Me. I'm strong enough, clever enough, well known enough. I don't want to be Hokage, but that's hardly a deciding factor. The problem with me being that the only way they'd choose me over father is, well, it'd be messy. Very messy. Option 2. Me. Jiraiya held up a hand. I'm a Sannin, so everyone knows me, and I've been running a spy ring for the past 20-odd years, so I'm sharp enough. Problem is, I spent those 20-odd years pretending to be a fat drunken old pervert. Pretending. Oi. Can it? Whiskers. Jiraiya took a swipe at Naruto, who ducked out of the way. But yes, my reputation is soured somewhat. The clans would think I'm a joke. And it would probably be good for me to maintain that spy ring I just mentioned, which I can't do as Kage. You want a turn? Sasuke nodded at Kakashi. He snorted, which did weird things to his half mask. Me as Hokage. I'm good, but I'm not. He paused. Okay. I am that good. I'm tactical minded, and I'm up there in the bingo book. Sure, why not? Option 3. Kakashi. But I wouldn't be as good as these two, and even Fugaku would be a tough fight for me. If I may. Haku raised a hand. Am I currently sat in the room with 3 of Konoha's strongest ninja? The trio looked at each other. Probably the 3 strongest, yeah. Kakashi agreed. Oh good. Just wanted to confirm that. Haku sat back down, significantly paler. Anyway, continuing with the Sannin theme, Jiraiya continued. Option 4, Orochimaru. Everyone made a face. Yeah. Better than Fugaku though. Maybe. Itachi allowed. You really hate that guy, don't you? But as I said before, everyone knows the Sannin, and there's one we haven't brought up yet. Option 5. The Lady Tsunade. The adults in the room stopped for a moment to consider it. I know her. Hinata mentioned. I remember once she beat my father in a taijutsu spar. While drunk. Sounds about right. Jiraiya chuckled to himself, obviously reminiscing. See, while I pretend to be a total waste of space, Tsunade is actually a drunken gambling addict. Upside is, because she's not putting it on as a cover, less people know about it, so her reputation isn't completely ruined. Downside is, well, she's a drunken gambling addict. And we want her to be Hokage. Naruto wrinkled his nose. Is that a good idea? I know her. Defended Jiraiya. If we get her in the office, she'll do the job. And she's a big enough presence that if she shows up, Fugaku will have to back down. Tsunade's probably our best hope. Where's the but? Sasuke rolled his eyes. You're the but. Shut up, Naruto. The but is that I don't know where she is, officially. I can find her, but it'll take me a few weeks. Jiraiya warned. Then get going. Itachi prompted. Father has momentum and influence. If we can't provide an alternative, people will feel pressured to pick someone. Then they'll pick me. Hinata assured, confidently. I'll continue my opposition. I know plenty of incredibly immoral negotiation and manipulation techniques, and I know the law. You'll have as long as you need. Important point. Jiraiya raised a finger, before pointing it to a certain one of the seated. Naruto's coming with me. I am. He is. Never split the party. Sasuke shook his head. We need to keep together. Why should he go with you? Your camaraderie is appreciated. Kakashi noted, dryly. But Jiraiya has good reason. Yeah. The old ninja chuckled. So, reason 1, we're probably going to need some talk no jutsu. Naruto blinked. You guys do realize that isn't an actual thing, right? Yes it is. Chorused everyone else in the room. And reason 2, well, if he stays he might be inviting the destruction of Konoha. What? Black cloaks. Red clouds. Jiraiya said, darkly. The adults in the room went silent. Quote. Violets are blue. Naruto added, hesitantly. You think the Akatsuki's after Naruto? Asked a shocked Kakashi, but Jiraiya ignored him, staring at the children with hard eyes. If you see anyone wearing black cloaks with red clouds, you run. Immediately. You run to the closest out of the people we just listed and you pray you're allowed to escape. They're that bad. Orochimaru was on that list. Naruto gulped. Jiraiya nodded. Orochimaru doesn't have any interest in you. The Akatsuki want to take out your tailed beast. That sounds like a good thing. By killing you. Oh. If he's in the village, he can't always be within a few meters of you. Jiraiya told the other adults. But I can keep him close to me, at least while we see if they want to try anything. Old man Hiruzen was one hell of a deterrent. Then we'll come too. Sasuke started to get out of his seat, but Itachi held up a hand. You and Hinata are needed here. If he gets back and you've let Fugaku be elected, he'll have wasted his trip. Then I'll go. Haku declared. Everyone looked at him, and he shrugged. What? I don't have any reason to be here. And Tsunade's a medical ninja. I'd be interested to learn some of what she knows. Aren't you supposed to be under a restraining order? Kakashi pointed out. I haven't had a breakdown in weeks. Defended the mist ninja. Fair enough. Shrugged Kakashi, before bitterly remarking, hey, at least we don't have to clear it with the Hokage. The next morning, Naruto, Jiraiya, and Haku met at the village's entrance. You not going to say goodbye to your team? The Sannin asked. Nah, they're still talking to a shadow clone of me. The Nine-Tails grinned cheekily. Figured I'd leave them someone to talk to over the next few weeks. Atta boy. Jiraiya turned on his heel. Now, we're going to run it from here to the next village, but after then we'll be slowing down. Make it more obvious we aren't a threat, and it gives me time to check up on my intelligence network. Got it. Naruto stretched, shouldering his bag. You sure you want to do this, old man? You might not be able to keep up with us. Jiraiya sighed forlornly and put a hand to his forehead. Alas, you have a point. I suppose and then he was gone. Naruto glanced at Haku, then off down the road, where a trail of dust carried into the middle distance. We probably should have expected that. Haku pointed out. They both took off running. Trust me, Kisame, said Neji Hyuga, watching Naruto leave the village. I can see him with my Byakugan. He's definitely still in the village. Chapter 33. Eyes to meet you. You what? Jiraiya skidded to a stop in the middle of the road. Cool chain things. Naruto reiterated. He had just been explaining his fight with Gaara. They were like bluey yellow, and where they touched Gaara the sand fell off. Holy. Jiraiya turned around and started gesturing at nothing in particular. I don't believe it. It's like she's come back to haunt me. First calling me out on my research, now the chains, what's next? Huh. Is he gonna start waving kitchen implements at me? Haku looked on in amusement. Old man. Naruto asked. Jiraiya sighed and turned back around. Sorry. All this time I thought you were your dad's kid through and through, but it turns out there's more of your mother in you than expected. He squinted off into the distance. A settlement was just barely visible on the horizon. We'll stop here for a breather, then continue on. We should be at the next village before sunset. Haku and Naruto followed his lead, sitting next to him on the side of the road. Your mother, as I've said, was Uzumaki Kushina. Jiraiya began. And no, I'm still not telling you who your dad was. Now the Uzumaki clan used to have their own damn hidden village, and it was shaping up to be just as prominent as the other 5. Trouble is, at some point a bunch of the other villages banded together to take them down. As a clan, they're formally disbanded, and their survivors and descendants scattered over the world. Most, like Kushina, ended up in the Leaf, but you can find them anywhere. I once met this kid, Nagato. Kami. I don't even know what happened to him. Why were they destroyed? Asked Haku. Surely they can't have been more of a threat than the Hyuga or Uchiha. Jiraiya wagged a finger. That's where you're wrong, little girl. Boy. Quote. Okay. Sure. See, the Uzumaki, officially, don't have a bloodline limit, at least not one you'd recognize. But you can loosely categorize bloodline limits into 3 types. Dojutsu I powers, combination nature transformations, like Haku here's ice, made from water and wind, and body transformations. Most body transformations are frankly hella gross, so that's not what the Uzumaki were labeled as. Jiraiya leaned back and held up 3 fingers. The Uzumaki were feared for 3 main reasons. 1. Their skill with sealing jutsu. We'll have to wait and see if you have any talent, Naruto, but knowing your parents, it'll be a miracle if you don't. The second is their incredible constitution. You heal fast, you live long, you're real tough, and you have massive chakra reserves, like the Senju. He flicked Naruto on the nose. You being able to make 1,000 shadow clones is partially because of the Kyuubi forcing its massive chakra reserves through your coils, but that's only possible because of how bulky you and your clan is. Huh. Naruto looked down at himself, clenching his fingers. And the third thing, Jiraiya continued, doesn't show up in every Uzumaki. I'd only ever seen it in Kushina. The adamantine chakra chains. A sealing jutsu, but not one that requires any paper or ink. They're nearly indestructible chains that can suppress chakra, which is as scary as it sounds. Like Hinata's gentle fist? Naruto asked. Similar. Jiraiya agreed. Not much use in blocking a fireball, obviously, but wrap someone up and you can stop them emitting chakra. They helped Kushina keep the Kyuubi in check. Her seal wasn't as good as yours. My mum was the old 9 tails. Naruto gaped. Jiraiya chuckled. Damn right she was. Why do you think you got chosen for the job? Whoa. So Naruto can use the chains too. Haku spoke up. Apparently. Jiraiya shrugged. Well, squirt. Can you? I think so. Naruto picked out a boulder a few meters away and pointed his hands towards it. Both times it wasn't like I wanted to kill Gaara. I just wanted him held. Restrained. A kinda yellow light flashed. The chains appeared around his arms and flew forwards, wrapping around the boulder. He laughed. Got it. Oh, this is so cool. Here. Haku stood up and put his hands together. In front of Naruto a mirror manifested, floating above the floor like the ones he had created on the bridge. This is reinforced by my chakra. Try and break it. Without using the Kyuubi, please. Naruto rolled his shoulders, cracked his neck, and blurred forwards. The punch was hard, and struck the mirror with a loud ring, but Naruto still stumbled backwards, hissing, with bruised knuckles. The mirror wasn't even scratched. Now try using the chains on it. Jiraiya directed. Naruto nodded and did as instructed. With an effort that was getting easier each time, he threw out the chains to encircle the mirror. It lost some of its luster, and immediately stopped floating. This time, when he punched it, it shattered like regular ice. Awesome. He breathed. This would have been so useful on the bridge. Jiraiya stood up again, brushing himself off. I gotta admit, Naruto, I don't have the foggiest how to train you in bloodline limits, so you'll have to work on it yourself. Some sensei you are. Naruto muttered. Anyway, break time's over, kiddies. What? We didn't have a break. I did. Jiraiya grinned cheekily. I'm the old man, remember? He took off running. Naruto and Haku looked at each other, sighed, and chased after him. 2 Akatsuki walked through the streets of Konoha. Two wide-brimmed hats and a heaped spoonful of genjutsu concealed their faces, and the black cloaks embossed with red clouds they sported weren't well known enough to give them away. 300 meters. One said to the other. He's in a run-down apartment near to the perfect. Problem? Asked the other. We've been spotted. The one replied. Things are about to get loud. Itachi dropped down onto the pavement alongside Kakashi. In front of them was a river, and on the other side of that river were two of the most dangerous ninja in the country. Your genjutsu's getting better, Neji. He called across the flowing water. It almost took me a second to spot you. Itachi greeted a calm voice. Still a lapdog for the village, I see. Woof. Deadpanned the Uchiha. How are we playing this? Kakashi asked from beside him. I have a shadow clone looking for any jonin it can find. You slow down Kisame. Itachi replied. Neji's mine. The following events would go on to happen very fast. Neji was halfway across the river before Kakashi, still busy pulling off his headband to reveal his Sharingan, could react. Fortunately, he had support. Itachi's hands were at his mouth in moments, and without appearing to even make seals, he was blasting a great fireball to hit Neji dead center of the river. Neji spun into a rotation. The result was kinda like what happened when Sasuke fought Hinata. Except a little bigger. A column of swirling fire tore up into the sky, towering over all the surrounding buildings. The water around the rotation churned and boiled from the heat and movement, causing steam to rise up and obscure the area. Kakashi used that cover and darted across the chaotic water's surface to charge Kisame. The big, blue, behemoth of a man reached behind himself and drew a large, incredibly conspicuous bandaged thing. To nobody's great surprise, it was Samahata. Kakashi pulled out, switching to a lightning jutsu that shot out of his hands towards Kisame, but the giant sword came up and consumed the attack, scales rustling ominously as it did so. That's not very fair. Kakashi switched to throwing kunai and explosive tags. On the river, the battle would be unobservable for any normal ninja. Two blurs darted around the water's surface, constantly clashing and separating, as said surface was constantly shredded by blades, impacted by explosions, and occasionally transformed into something else for an attack. There were roughly 4 layers of genjutsu occurring at any given moment. Itachi blocked a palm strike with his sword and used an explosion of water beneath him from a previous jutsu to catapult him into the air. He span, upside down, until he was facing Neji. His Sharingan pattern shifted. Amaterasu, he declared. Black flames exploded into existence upon the Hyuga's body, completely engulfing him, and Itachi landed to watch the ultimate fire technique lick hungrily at Neji's form. Neji did not completely lose control of his chakra, and fall into the river. He didn't even deliberately go underwater to try and put out the flames, not like that would work. He stood stock still atop the river's surface. And then, beneath the flames, cracks appeared. Kakashi paused in his attack of Kisame to gape as Neji's exterior fell off. Revealing itself to be something hard and white, glinting like opal, shards dropped from Neji's body into the river, taking the effects of the Amaterasu with it. The Hyuga stretched his arms casually. His eyes were white. Not the usual white circles in the center of his sclera, pure white. They were an oval of ivory reflecting perfectly, and swirls of the same color and texture spread out across his face. The fuck? Whispered Kakashi. Gokei Byakugan. Ground out Itachi. He charged. He flung his sword straight forwards, and when Neji slapped it out of the way he went in for a grab. They both caught hold of each other's hands, heads inches from each other. Their eyes met. Tsukiyomi. Kokosora. It was impossible to tell which one spoke first. Then Itachi collapsed into the water unconscious as Neji stumbled backwards, shaking his head as if to clear some confusion. Shit. Kakashi jumped across, snatching Itachi out of the water and running for the opposite bank. Kisame moved to intercept, but was blocked by Sarutobi Asuma, catching the massive broadsword on 2 chakra-enhanced daggers. Kurenai dropped down in front of Neji, and began weaving genjutsu around him as rapidly as she could. A couple more ninja appeared beside them as well, high-ranking Uchiha police, as other jonin started appearing on nearby rooftops. Neji sighed. Kisame. They moved the target. Fall back. He waved a hand and Kurenai stumbled backwards as if struck, then he body flickered away. Kisame grunted, batted Asuma off, and fled into the trees. Konoha's finest all independently decided not to pursue. Is he okay? 4 of the Jonin crowded around the unconscious Itachi. He's breathing, but he's limp. Kakashi muttered. 3 possibilities. 1, he'll be fine when he wakes up in a few seconds. 2, he's a vegetable. 3, anything in between. Kami. What the hell did that bastard do? Kurenai grimaced. Itachi used his bullshit hacks Sharingan genjutsu that lets him mentally torture someone for days in the space of a few seconds, usually putting them in a coma. Kakashi explained. Neji did something back. And won. How? The Byakugan can't do anything like this. Asuma growled, gesturing to Itachi. Well, neither can most Sharingan. Kakashi admitted. Damn. Kurenai summarized. I'll take him to the hospital. One of you can notify his father. Genjutsu. Huh. She was a specialist. She knew all sorts of sneaky tricks one could perform by messing with another's perceptions. She'd never tried to use it to mentally bludgeon someone unconscious. I wonder what kind of sick, monstrous things they did to each other. 1 minute earlier, Itachi appeared in his mindscape and grinned, knowing the Tsukiyomi had taken hold. The sky was red, black cross-looking things dotted the dirt at his feet, and some distance in front of him stood Neji. Itachi teleported to right in front of him. He could do whatever he wanted in his own mind, and cocked his head, regarding the missing nin silently. Neji didn't move. You seem oddly reticent. Here you are with me at your absolute mercy, and yet you do nothing. Oh, I'm sure you've thought long and hard about being at my mercy. Itachi replied, threateningly. So long spent out alone with nothing but a gaggle of murderers for company. They stared at each other again. Gay, remarked Neji. Itachi's mouth twitched. Then both broke down into raucous laughter. Itachi waved his hand, and their surroundings changed to something more comfortable. The red sky and plains switched for a view of Konoha's skyline, leaving both now stood on a rooftop they had liked to meet at when they were younger. Then he walked forwards and grabbed Neji in a hug. The Hyuga reciprocated, squeezing Itachi tightly. It's good to see you, he said, smiling. You too, Itachi admitted. Fuck. It's been too long. I agree. Neji enthused. The other day they said, someone should go try and get the Kyuubi, and I thought, Konoha. Yes please. How's the Mangekyo? It'll hurt like a bitch tomorrow morning, but I'm not blind yet. Itachi reassured, letting go. How's the Goke? Started to lose feeling in my fingers and toes. Neji sighed. Shit. Dude, sorry. No, you did well. We needed to show them the Akatsuki's still a threat. Itachi snapped his fingers and a pair of chairs and a table appeared on the tiles next to them, and he sat down with a sigh. And now that you've tanked the Amaterasu they'll believe it. I know, but it sucks. Plus I'm about to not fall into a coma after the Tsukiyomi, should scare those in the know. Neji sat down. But I should warn you, I don't have quite as much control over the Kokosora. When we leave here you're about to have a good day or so of, well, total sensory deprivation. Ass. My bad. Anyway, how's Sasuke? How's Hinata? Itachi sighed. It's a long story. Well, we've got a whole 2 seconds. Neji pointed out. Witty. Yeah, I doubt you'll want the whole 72 hours, so we've got as long as we need to talk. Short answer. They're doing really well, actually. Really? Yeah. Your sis still hates you. Good. Enough of that shit. But you know the little blondie she was crushing on? Yes. My target. Yeah, him. Well, they're on a team together, with Sasuke. And they're actually getting along. Sure, Hinata and Sasuke tried to kill each other in the Chunin exams, but they what? They're both massive edgelords when they feel like it. Itachi chuckled. But they've gotten close, they're helping each other out. I think they'll pull through if they stick together. Who knows, they might qualify as mentally healthy if we give them a few years. Great. Now I've definitely got to botch this mission. Neji tutted. Is Naruto still with Jiraiya? Because if he is I can pretend I'm outmatched and retreat. Should be. They're going after Tsunade, trying to make her become Hokage. You should see Hinata. She's going up against Fugaku in politics like this 4-foot-tall demon lawyer. Neji's eyes lit up. Really? Okay. Hold on. Double agent meeting first. Then you show me all the important details about my little sister. Deal. Itachi smiled. So, first of all, who's even in the Akatsuki? Chapter 34. Family Reunion. The Hyuga family is made up of one nuclear family and usually anywhere from 2 to 5 branch families at any given time. Its small size relative to other clans such as the Aburame or Uchiha, despite its unwillingness to undergo the barbaric, incestual practices sometimes seen in those clans, is due in the most part due to the caged bird seal. The Uchiha do not incest, whiteys. Then explain why I see you meeting up with Izumi, she is twice removed, asshole. The caged bird seal is applied to the foreheads of all branch family members at age 3. In the main family, all but the eldest heir are also branded at that age, with that heir locked into position as the next head of the Hyuga family. Your family is barbaric. I know. The seal's primary purpose is to immediately denature and eliminate the special properties of the Byakugan from its owner upon death, or upon its removal from the owner's body. This is a security measure to prevent its capture by hostile hidden villages or missing nin who might want to steal it. Those branded with the seal can have children with the Byakugan, but those children will not be able to produce children in turn with the Byakugan. In other words, after the seal is applied, only that individual and their immediate children will have the eye. This is to preserve the sanctity of the main branch, but is also another security measure. Should a Hyuga defect, or be captured and not choose suicide, they will not be able to spread the Byakugan for more than one more generation. The seal also facilitates several other specialty jutsu that target those branded specifically, designed as control measures for disobedient branch members. These include the caged bird feeding, which allows the caster to give or drain chakra remotely. Caged bird gouged eyes, which preemptively activates the seal and blinds the branded fuck. Caged bird clipped wings, which causes paralysis and debilitating pain, fuck. And caged bird unlatched, which instantly kills the branded individual. This can be cast by the branded as a suicide jutsu. Fuck, dude. It should be noted that the caged bird seal is a simple yet implacable seal that cannot be removed by any known technique. It only vanishes upon the branded individual's death, and any attempts to remove the seal will likely result in them dying anyway. Basic summary of the caged bird seal, Hyuga's official bloodline limit tome. Scribbles by assorted. 97, 98, 99, 500, 501. 2, 3. Is this usual behavior for you? Naruto Prime was doing press-ups in the center of the room Jiraiya had rented. Naruto 2, 3, and 4 were sat on top of him. Yeah, he said, breathlessly, as 2 continued to count. Most days I'm training with Guy, so whenever I fail to do that I have to put some work in separately. Am I bothering you? Haku sat in the corner, watched Naruto's muscles flexing as he continued. Nope. You don't stop. Naruto's 5, 6, and 7 were also training, in their case with the chakra chains. The room was crisscrossed with the golden links, as the clones shot them out in all directions at every opportunity. Where is Jiraiya, anyway? Haku asked. I know Zabuza would have been scouting the area. He had the acronym LEAF, funnily enough. Check for law enforcement, escape routes, altitude variance, and friendlies. He'd check for all 4 every time he stopped somewhere. Cool. Naruto 5 enthused. Jiraiya's probably out looking for girls. Quote. Oh, yeah, he's a massive pervert. There was a knock on the door, and Naruto 6 hopped up to answer it. About time, Ero-sensei. You'd better not have brought along company because we don't have enough rooms for a slumber party. The man at the door was not Jiraiya. He was a tall, lean man with a black cloak wrapped around him that sported red clouds. His hair was black with hints of dark blue, and 2 strands of it framed his face while the majority fell down behind his head. A leaf headband with a long, deliberate line cut into it was attached to his forehead, and below it were 2 eyes. Hyuga eyes. Naruto 6 ran through the checklist of living Hyuga in his head, and cross-referenced it with his Akatsuki database. This is one of the moments where I'm completely outmatched, isn't it? He mentioned. Quite, said Neji Hyuuga. Naruto Prime reached for the chakra that powered his chains and then he was unconscious. Earlier that morning. Witty comebacks. Check. Fear-mongering. Check. Poorly veiled insults as to his political integrity. Check. Then that should be everything. Sasuke smiled and straightened his tie. Their current mission was just as vital as any other to the success of the Leaf Village, but one that required a suit rather than a flak vest. His cursed seal chafed against the collar. Hinata was dressed up too, in an incredibly impractical dress that was nonetheless absolutely stunning. They had together come up with a theory that the fashion was deliberately restrictive, specifically designed to limit ninja killing each other over the negotiating table. This is going to be an outright war. Sasuke sighed. Trying to keep all of the clans united against father. It's a kind of war I've been training for since I was 5, but still. Same here. Hinata agreed, flicking irritably at the fabric covering her cursor mark. But what I really wonder is. There was a boom. They both turned to see a massive tower of swirling fire blasting up into the sky. They shared a glance, and then both leapt towards the disturbance. By the time they got there, it was already over. Anbu covered the scene, as well as a few other curious ninja drawn by the sight, and it was obvious from the terrain a battle had taken place. Sasuke spotted a familiar face, and ran up. Excuse me, Kurenai-sensei. What happened? An attack. The Jonin may normally have been hesitant to reveal the information, but right now she was clearly shaken up by something. Neji Hyuga, and another man, in black cloaks with red clouds. They were after something, but they left before they could find it, whatever it is. The woman shook her head and vanished. Sasuke turned to Hinata with wide eyes. Akatsuki. He whispered. Neji. She whispered back. Then, as one, Naruto. Kisame, mildly infuriated, swiped at another Naruto with Samahata. Neji, can you help with this? I am helping. Neji replied. I'm carrying the prisoner. Neji had successfully rendered Naruto insensate and pulled him over his shoulder. He had, however, forgotten to deal with all the other shadow clones, which had then summoned even more. The result was he and Kisame wading their way through a sea of obnoxious genin desperately trying to recover their creator. He was more than capable of striking down any clone that got too close, and throwing a shuriken through any that tried to sneakily substitute with the unconscious Naruto, but it was really annoying. Adding to the chaos was the strange ice boy who had immediately broken into a screaming fit along the lines of, "You fucking bastards, how dare you, I won't let any more of my masters be taken away from me, you hear me," etc., with tears running down his cheeks as he bombarded the duo with Senbon. Getting fed up with this, Kisame shouldered Samahata and made a few hand seals. Water bullet jutsu. A massive bolt of liquid flew through the corridor to peg the black-haired child. Only to freeze solid, creating a wall of ice across the hallway. Huh, mumbled Kisame. Then that wall blasted forwards into dozens of shards of ice heading for the Akatsuki pair. Kisame redrew Samahata and span it, creating an impenetrable wall for the projectiles to shatter against, then he darted forwards and grabbed the child around the throat. Can I kill the ice girl? He called over his shoulder. Boy. Neji replied, still fending off the Naruto clones. And sure, if you have to. Wait, this is a boy ow. While he was distracted, the boy had encased Kisami's arm in a layer of ice. When he flexed his arm to shatter the offending covering, he lost grip on his prisoner, who jumped free. Demonic ice mirrors jutsu. Neji watched the chakra weave itself around him, taking form as a series of, well, demonic-looking mirrors made of ice. Interesting bloodline limit, he complimented, as the boy vanished into the surface of the mirrors. Interesting, but, the child leapt from a mirror behind his right shoulder, and he darted a hand out to catch him in the throat. Haku crumpled to the floor, stunned, as Neji walked up to the mirror directly in his way. Insufficient. No, mumbled the boy, desperately trying to get up, even though the tenketsu in his neck was blocked, meaning he'd lose consciousness any moment. Don't. Take him away from me. Oh, I won't. Tilting his head slightly, Neji put on of his fingers against a certain spot and pushed. The mirror cracked, and fell apart. The view beyond it, to an ordinary person, would have just been a hallway ending with a window. Here. Neji shrugged off Naruto for Kisame to catch, these next are mine. Kisame, well used to Neji's enhanced vision, just nodded and grabbed Naruto's limp form. The Hyuga, in one smooth movement, cleared out every other Naruto clone in the hallway, just in time to be stood silently watching the window crash in. His heart nearly stopped when he saw Hinata. Oh look, she has grown. Though that may have been the effect of her wearing a dress that had been summarily torn apart for greater mobility. You! She screamed, practically flying through the corridor with energy pulsing around her. And there are the gates Itachi mentioned. Impressive. He caught the flying kick she launched at his head. Hello, cousin, he remarked. She twisted out of his grip, and launched another round of strikes that he blocked with painful ease. Still too slow, he remarked, sighing, before planting a foot in her chest and pushing. She went sprawling back into the corridor, a corridor that immediately filled with fireballs courtesy of the other child, Sasuke. Neji put some chakra in his hands and swept them out of the air, batting them back towards the Uchiha with much higher velocity. One caught him in the shoulder and he hissed, throwing off the now burning upper half of his garments. Not at your brother's level yet, it seems. Neji tutted. Then Hinata was making hand seals again, with an accuracy that spoke of hours upon hours of practice. It hurt, the sequence he knew she was attempting, but he supposed he couldn't blame her for learning it. He waited, as she finished the seals and thrust her hands out towards him. Caged bird, clipped wings jutsu. There was a pause. Kisame chuckled from behind Neji. I trust you didn't think it would be that simple to change your fate. He remarked, offhandedly. What? But, how? Hinata was shaking. Deciding to dispense with the suspense, Neji reached up to his headband, and lifted it up. No. It was impossible. She lived in a world where people could breathe fire and walk on water, weave illusions and summon great monsters. But this couldn't be done. She knew it couldn't be done. When Neji lifted up his forehead protector, cut into to show his betrayal of the village, it revealed his forehead. A blank forehead. The same pale pink as the rest of his skin. So where the fuck was the caged bird seal? Sasuke glanced across at her and she realized she had said it aloud. Why would I wear a mark demonstrating my subservience to the Hyuga? Asked Neji, rhetorically. I threw off those shackles years ago. Not all shackles can simply be thrown off. She shouted, traumatized. The caged bird seal only breaks upon death. How? How did you? Still so set in your ways. Neji tutted. You, the one I've chosen to challenge me. I too once believed that some things could never be done, but I soon learned that was folly. There is only one fate, one future, one true world line. But we hardly know that now. We can only believe. And the universe does not care what you believe to be impossible. He flexed his fingers. Allow me to demonstrate. The alarm bells rang in her head, but she did not have time to react before Neji appeared in front of her. She didn't see his hands move, but she felt her body stiffen, as Neji turned around to grasp Sasuke round the back of the neck. His hand covered the Uchiha's curse mark. Hiragekoma. He muttered, calmly. And Sasuke screamed. No. Hinata cried, straining to move as Sasuke writhed against Neji's grip, but she could see which tenketsu her cousin had hit. He had completely immobilized her from the neck down. You bastard, you can't take him too. Kisame. Neji warned, not letting go. On your left. The shark man turned, and Hinata, remembering to pay attention to her Byakugan, let out a surprised gasp. Neji's warning came too late, as Naruto, still resting on Kisame's shoulder, poofed out of existence, to be replaced by a small green toad. Said toad then slapped Kisame around the face, and dispelled itself. That was when Jiraiya appeared from around the corner, with Naruto over one shoulder and some random woman over the other. Appealing to my perversion ultima, are we? He gave a hearty belly laugh. While your offering is appreciated, Jiraiya the gallant would never take liberties with a girl under genjutsu. It's like you weren't even trying. Almost. Neji agreed. He released Sasuke's neck, and the boy crumpled to the ground. Oh damn, that's one of the Sannin. Kisame growled, turning to face the new threat. I'm not sure if we're a match for him. Don't be ridiculous, we could tot. Neji paused. I mean, yes, I'm not sure we're a match for him either. For a moment, Hinata was hopeful. Jiraiya slapped his palms to the ground. Toad mouth bind jutsu. Hinata, for the life of her, couldn't tell if it was a genjutsu or not. The wooden walls of the corridor were replaced with some sticky pink substance that looked not unlike the gullet of some great monster. Neji and Kisame tensed. Flee, offered the latter. For now. The former agreed. Keep trying. Hinata, you're making progress. With that, the pair vanished down a side corridor. Jiraiya didn't follow them to check his jutsu's success, he ran straight across the trio of teens immobilized on the floor. You three all right? What did he do? I'm paralyzed. Hinata admitted, in a daze. A gentle fist technique. It should wear off on its own in a few minutes. There was a boom from down the corridor, and Hinata winced, preparing to tell Jiraiya what she'd just seen. She didn't need to. He grimaced, and put his hands together, dispelling whatever technique he'd put on their surroundings. They've escaped. Continue. Naruto and Haku are both victims of Tenketsu strikes, both should wake up soon. She explained, vocal cords taut. Sasuke is. I don't know what that was. The Uchiha had reached a kneel and put his hand to the back of his neck, but his expression was one of wonder rather than pain. The curse mark. He whispered, removing his hand to show them. It's gone. Chapter 35. Don't you dare try to guilt trip me. Sasuke sat at Itachi's bedside. Hinata stalked forwards and backwards across the room. It was not a comfortable moment. He shipped us off. I know. He attached us to a toad and just sent us home. I know. We should go back. If I summon 2 owls consecutively, they should have the stamina to catch us up with them. No. Excuse me. Sasuke turned to her, eyes hard. No. We stay here. We can't just. My brother. Sasuke cut in, angrily. Is in a coma. And I didn't even know because we went off half-cocked with no backup to fight 2 S-rank missing nin. And because we did so, my father was in council for 2 hours this morning with no opposition. How can you? Hinata was facing him down now. Sasuke. Your teammate just nearly. Don't you fucking dare try and guilt trip me. Sasuke stood abruptly, walking up to her. It was just like Orochimaru in the forest. Your cousin could have killed both of us before we'd even gone in through that window. The only reason we're still alive is because he wanted to toy with us. He stepped back, sighing. Funny thing. Now the curse mark was gone, his anger bled out way quicker, leaving him just tired. Look. What are the 2 things you want most? Neji dead. She answered, immediately. Then she paused. And Naruto. Yeah, I know. Sasuke rolled his eyes. So. You're not as strong as Neji yet, don't get mad. You'll kick his ass someday, but you're not there right now. So going out there and accompanying them won't help you. As for Naruto, the best thing you can do for him right now. It's make sure he isn't risking his life and wasting his time. He put a hand on her shoulder. Stay here. Do some politics. So when Naruto gets home, we can all keep moving forwards. Hinata looked down at the floor, hands clenched. He just cheats. She bit out. First the owls, then the seal. How do I beat someone who keeps doing the impossible? Start doing it yourself. Sasuke suggested. Outmaneuvering the head of the biggest clan in Konoha probably looks impossible, doesn't it? Hinata took in a deep breath. All right. A few weeks. By the time Naruto's back I'll have Fugaku on a leash. That's. Odd phrasing. No, you've just spent too long around Itachi. She smiled at him. And aren't dramatic speeches Naruto's thing? I picked up a few things. Sasuke shrugged. Do. You want a hug? No. Okay. Quote. A little one. Okay. Uzumaki Naruto was in love. It had taken him a long time to realize this fact, worryingly long, when the object of his affections had been so close for so long. He pondered, briefly, on what love really meant. Was it a physical attraction? Because if so, he was definitely smitten there. Or was it something more tied to personality? A respect for someone's drive, an appreciation of their quirks. He felt all those too. In the end, he decided that it was something deeper than all that. True love was understanding what someone was. It was when you gazed into their soul, witnessed their true purpose, and found it the most beautiful thing in the world. Naruto. You in there. Beautiful. Naruto murmured. Jiraiya coughed. Well, anyway. That was the Rasengan. And her name's as beautiful as her face. The boy sighed, dreamily, looking at the massive hole the technique had drilled into the cliff side. If he looked at me like that I might actually pounce on him. Haku mused from a safe distance. Your father's technique. Jiraiya explained. Pure shape transformation. A sphere of concentrated chakra with one of the highest attack potencies in my arsenal. She's perfect. Naruto whispered. Well, not quite, Jiraiya admitted. You take that back. She gets better. Jiraiya reassured him. Aw crap, now you've got me doing it. Yashi, it's still an incomplete technique. Your pops never managed to apply nature transformation to it to make it elemental. Kakashi tried, failed, and made the Chidori, which speaks volumes about what it's supposed to be able to do. Every time you mention my dad, he's doing something awesome. Naruto pointed out. He must have been one hell of a ninja. He was, kid. Jiraiya smiled. He definitely was. Well, teach me the beautiful murder jutsu. Alright, fine. So the first thing you need to learn. Ah, that is the most adorable thing I have ever seen. Sasuke and Hinata broke apart at the speed of highly trained and highly embraced ninja, as the new arrival in the room put a hand up to her mouth and laughed. Byakugan. Sasuke hissed. I was distracted. Hinata shot back. Rule 1 of dojutsu. Don't become over-dependent on it. The stranger agreed, walking over to Itachi. She had unremarkable long brown hair and eyes, and a mole beneath one eye. She reached into a pocket and drew out a very specific flower, sliding it into a vase in the coma patient's bedside. Sasuke and Hinata, both well trained in clan formalities, knew what it meant. Not to be rude, Sasuke began, but who are you and why are you giving my brother the unrequited love flower? It's an in-joke. She explained. He has a bit of a history of ignoring me, and then he went ahead and got himself put in a coma. Which doesn't really answer your question. She looked up and smiled. I suppose you could say I'm his girlfriend. Sasuke looked at her blankly. Quote. Huh. He certainly kept that quiet. He would have had to. She sighed. Part of the reason we first bonded was because neither of us really got on with the clan while we were growing up. Analyzing. Processing. You're an Uchiha, Sasuke exclaimed, surprised. She didn't have the signature black hair, nor was she wearing the clan symbol anywhere on her person. Technically, she responded, wiggling one hand in a saso motion. Mum was a member but dad wasn't, so I'm in a strange limbo of them not wanting to acknowledge that I exist. Hinata had a different issue. Wait, the Uchiha other Uchiha. Wouldn't that be Ins? No. Sasuke and the stranger both replied in unison, frantically. Big clan. Bloodline purity. Sasuke explained. It's, not weird, I swear. This happens regularly. Hinata wrinkled her nose. You know, the Byakugan doesn't have to rely on kissing cousins to maintain its purity. Neither does the Sharingan, but I suppose it must be easier to maintain a weaker bloodline. Sasuke sniffed. The Byakugan is not a weaker bloodline. It so is. I'm sorry, who won the exam finals? You only won because I forfeit. I could have killed you at the end there. Easy for you to say now. They both stopped, as the stranger started laughing again. Oh, dear. You two sound just like Itachi and Neji. The temperature in the room dropped by about 10 degrees. Which was a little insensitive, I'm sorry. Tell you what, if you'd like I can train with you while Itachi's out like this. Temporarily, of course. He's far too stubborn to stay out of the fight for long. Sasuke frowned. No offense, miss, but we don't even know your name. Right, my bad. She gave them a wave. My name's Izumi. Izumi Uchiha. Some days later, the Lady Tsunade was having a very good day, and it terrified her. She was not a lucky person. Years of gambling had taught her this. She wasn't a poor gambler. Experience had taught her how to read others, when to call and when to bluff, etc. But her cards just sucked. Always. Perpetually. Every time. There were very few times in her life when she had gotten a good run of luck in the gambling den. They had invariably preceded the absolute worst periods of her entire life. Which was why when she threw down a royal flush, again, all she could do was sigh, mutter a half-hearted, good game, to her shocked competitors, and stand up with her winnings. That was amazing, my lady. Shizune, ever loyal, came running up to congratulate her. With this, we can pay off all your debts. Sure. Tsunade shrugged. And I know you want to spend it on wait, what? Shizune blinked. You will. Of course. Tsunade dumped a large majority of the money into her assistant's hands. I get the feeling I might want to tie up some loose ends. You pay off the asshats, I'm going to get a drink. That's more like you. The younger woman chuckled. I'll meet you at the usual place, then. The usual place being the nearest pub, one she had gotten used to visiting over the last few months. She sat down, ordered some sake, and waited. After a few minutes, the door chimed, and a familiar head of white hair poked through. Oh, I hate being right. So then I said, what do you mean there's paint on the Hokage monument? I wasn't even near there. And then Iruka said, Naruto. What? We're here. The genin paused in his dramatic retelling of one of the greatest tales in prank history. Jiraiya grabbed him by the hand, and nodded towards one of the booths. A blonde-haired woman sat there, nursing a bottle of alcohol alone. That her? Haku asked, from Jiraiya's other side. That's her. The man nodded. His face was drawn, mouth in a thin line. It was obvious the reunion was emotional for him. You two wait here for now. This is going to have to be done carefully, with no small amount of tact, and possibly bribery. Leave the introductions to me. With nods from both children, he walked over to Tsunade's booth. She didn't look up as he sat down. This is the fourth cesspit I've searched trying to find you. He began, searching for a reaction. He didn't get one. Attempt to. Though, he squinted at the label on the drink in front of her. This place has better taste than the others. He reached for the neck of the bottle. Her hand clamped across his the moment he reached it. Listen, and I'll buy you another. He offered, trying not to show how much her grip was hurting him. Slowly, she relaxed her grip, leaning back in the chair and taking a look at him. Jiraiya, she said, eventually. You've got fat. Fatter. He corrected, taking the bottle for himself and swigging from it. But you look exactly the same. Still under that transformation technique. I don't know what you're talking about. She demurred with a smile, taking the bottle back off him. This is just natural youth and good skin care. She poured some more for herself. So why are you here? Something tells me if you'd just wanted to catch up, you'd have done it sometime a decade ago. I recall you made it clear you didn't want that, in a pretty explicit way. He defended. Hidden Swamp will never be the same. She laughed, for a moment. Then her eyes hardened. Well then, what is it? Sarutobi-sensei is dead, he said, bluntly. Her eyes widened imperceptibly. See. I'm sorry to hear that, I didn't know. Then I won't get on your back for not showing up at his funeral. Jiraiya allowed. You'll never guess who did him in. Old Scaly. She guessed. He nodded. Fuck. Yeah. Tsunade slumped backwards with a sigh. To be honest, Sensei probably would have preferred it to be one of us. And he died defending the village. Jiraiya nodded. He wouldn't have wanted it any other way. They shared a brief silence, both nursing their thoughts and their drinks in the other's company. So, who's next? Tsunade eventually asked. Him dying leaves one hell of a power vacuum. Who's the new Hokage? Jiraiya coughed, and met her eyes. She realized. No. Tsunade. No. Hell no. You're our best shot. Like fuck I am. She slammed a fist down on the table. Who are the other candidates? Fugaku Uchiha. Oh. Shit, okay. Who else? Kakashi. Who? Exactly. And that's it. Seriously. She wrinkled her nose. What about that? She snapped her fingers trying to remember. That Neji kid, he'll be old enough. He betrayed the village. Shit, really? The other one, Itachi, then. Last I checked, he's in a coma. Jiraiya leaned forwards. We need you, Tsunade. No you don't. She waved derisively. You need some romantic-ized version of me you have in your head, some badass medical warrior. Not this. She gestured vaguely. Jiraiya raised an eyebrow. Trust me, my romantic-ized version of you does not look like what you're imagining. Pervert. Bitch. Don't think making me laugh convinces me, asshat. I can't do that job. I don't want that job. Yes, you can, and it isn't about what you want. He put both hands on the table. Our village needs a leader, soon. Hiruzen would have. Don't you dare use him to blackmail me. She glared right back. All right then. Jiraiya paused. Think about the children, Tsunade. The poor innocent children with their hopeful eyes, youthful innocence, and this is the one you want to be Hokage. Naruto leaned over Jiraiya's shoulder, squinting. She's so old. Tsunade dead-eyed him. Who the fuck is this? Uzumaki Naruto. Future Hokage. He struck a pose, before losing his balance and falling down into the seat next to Jiraiya. I'm here to review the person looking after my hat for me. So far, not impressed. Naruto, I told you to stay away. Jiraiya twitched. You did, but we decided you were taking too long and not making much progress. Haku walked up, also scrutinizing the newly introduced Sannin as well as the bottle in front of her. I wouldn't have expected a medical ninja to be willing to do this to her body. Do I look like it's affecting me, boy? Tsunade snarled, moving her arms to emphasize her generous figure. That's a transformation jutsu. Haku dismissed, before blinking. Wait, did you just get my gender right? Honey, I'm a medic nin, I know what junk someone's packing. Tsunade tilted her head. You fancy yourself a healer. I'm learning, but I'm better at using the knowledge to kill people. Haku admitted. I can respect that. Tsunade turned back to Naruto. And then there's you. I can sense the Kyuubi in your stomach. Is that your excuse for your disrespect? Oh no, I take full responsibility for my own disrespect. Naruto replied, offended. So when I tell you you look like a saggy old cow, you know that's all me. Jiraiya's head hit the table. Listen here, you little. Tsunade stopped. Then laughed. Nice try, asshole. But you're not goading me into taking the job. She leaned in. Good luck becoming Hokage, punk. Maybe if they put you in charge, that hellhole of a village will finally fall apart. Hey, I'd be a great Hokage. Naruto shot back. I've even learned the Rasengan. Really? Tsunade put one hand on her chest in mock shock. Can you show me? Well, he shifted. I've technically not learned it yet. But I've done the first stage already. Thought so. Tsunade looked down on him smugly. That jutsu took Jiraiya years to learn. By the time you manage it, we'll be on cage number 20. As if. Naruto pointed dramatically. I'll have mastered this jutsu in a week. Believe it. Sure you will. I will. Sure you will. Bet I will. Bet you won't. Bet I will. Bet you won't. How much? What? How much do you bet? Jiraiya, head still on the table, cracked an eye open. Tsunade glared at Naruto for a long moment. Alright, punk. I see what you're doing. Sure thing. If you can master the Rasengan in 5 days, I'll come back and be the Hokage. Hell, I'll even throw in this. She wrapped her fingers around her neck, tugging, and pulled off a necklace with an odd green crystal in it. But if you don't, you all have to leave and never bother me again. Deal. Now hold on. Deal. Naruto cut across Jiraiya's interruption, spitting on his palm and holding it out. Amused, Tsunade did the same. They shook. 5 days. Naruto confirmed. And I mean the full 5. None of this, midday on the 5th, crap that caught me out at the Chunin exams. Of course. Tsunade replied. You made Chunin. Well, no. Ha. Hey, shut up. Jiraiya slumped back in his seat with a sigh. Well, that's us doomed. Hey, bartender, can we get another bottle of this, please? That's it for this part. If you enjoyed it, then like, share and subscribe for the next video, as it's going to be more interesting, and also check out my other playlists. Hope you would like them too.